The 2026 NBA draft is in the books, and we've had a few days to kind of chew on this. There have been trades, there have been, re-signings and stuff like that. So my co-host, Jam Hines, and I, we're going to be breaking it all down and giving our thoughts. Jam, how we holding up?
Doing great, officially closing out the cycle with this one. So I'm excited to kind of review the draft and get some takeaways on it.
All right, so in order for us to do that, we got to rock. So let's go ahead and do that. The No Ceilings NBA Draft Show is live here on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel. We're also on your podcast player of choice. Jam Hines over there, Stephen Gillaspie right here. We are the Draft Sickos, and we are now in your ear. We want to talk to you guys about the importance of analytics, Jaylen Brown, all of the... No, we're not going to do that on today's show. We want to talk to you all about the draft and give our thoughts because, Jam, I don't know how you felt. Like, when we were covering the draft, I felt like it's harder to kind of like digest what actually happens. Like as we're covering it, day one, I was doing a lot of like guy in the chair making posts and stuff like that. Day two, you and I were on the live stream with Maxwell. I was on it for a little bit. Shout out Xfinity. I was on the stream for a little bit. And I know that you covered the entire thing. But now that we've had a couple days to chew on it and some of these NBA teams have made some of the decisions that they've made so far, I think it's good just to kind of like dive in. We'll kind of comb through it and see how we feel about everything, Jam. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up a really good point. Like we're covering the draft day, we're 1 and 2, and it's a lot going on, especially that second day. There's so many trades. You're trying to figure out, oh, where's this player going? Like, where's this pick going? Like, trying to figure out the fit on the fly too. So it's a lot of moving parts. It's definitely a lot of fun, but this kind of really sets a more stable way for us to kind of go through everything. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so what we're gonna do, as we like to say, what is fun without the rules? We'll lay out the rules here real quick. What we're gonna do is we're gonna comb through just the top 30 of the draft. At the end, we might shout out some second round selections. We'll definitely talk about a couple throughout the top 30, but we're just gonna use this as an excuse to talk about each of the teams, some of the moves that have been made. And again, we're not just covering the draft. We're going to touch on some offseason stuff too. So some of the major trades that have taken place within the NBA, some of the massive re-signings. I have some in my notes, Jam. If I miss any that come to the top of your mind, obviously, I'm counting on you to bring those up. But again, our fans, Jam, we got the best fans in the business. We call ourselves the Draft Sickos. If you're listening to the show, you're the real Draft Sickos. So if there's anything that you want us to address as we come through here, any interesting talking points, I did get one on the YouTube channel on the post that I made. We'll cover that. But obviously, if you're watching live, ask your questions. And while we got you, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're closing in on, I think, 27,000 subscriptions here on the YouTube channel. Fantastic stuff. And I'll plug the website while I'm plugging stuff, Jam. NoCeilingsNBA.com. We're closing in on, I think, 9,000 subs over there. So you guys can help us on that. That would be great. And as we're going through the draft, if you want to follow along on ncmockdraft.com and cover the draft with us and talk about trades that you would have made. Also, that website now has the 2027 draft class already. Albert's a madman. I don't know if this dude ever sleeps. So that should pay all of... Shout out to Albert. That should pay all of our bills, Jam. Let's get started, dude. As you know, Mr. DMV, the Washington Wizards had the number one pick. And, well, it felt like a lot of people were like, it's not a foregone conclusion that AJ Debance is going to be the number one pick. We have to consider these other guys, too. It ultimately ended up being AJ Debance. They also re-signed Trae Young. We'll touch on that a little bit. And then they also, in the second round, they added Felix Okpara, a guy that I know a lot of us here at No Ceilings really liked as well. So, Jam, did you guys get your franchise cornerstone? Is this the perfect outcome? What's the timeline looking like with AJ Debance here with the Washington Wizards?
Yeah, it's an excellent pick by them, as we talked about all year long. But really, during draft night and lead up to the draft, Darren was the number one player on my board. I thought that was still a great fit, him in the backcourt alongside Trey Young, and then you still have the collection of wings there, and Keyshawn George and Trey Johnson can play the 2-3. Both of them actually can do that as well too. And you should have a collection of there with Koulibaly there making strides as well. So I thought Peterson could have fit there as well too. But when you talk about AJ, everyone wants a two-way wing, especially with the positional size like that is 6'9", the plus wingspan, the ball skills, the shot making ability, the shot creation ability, defensive tools. So he really has it all and is still developing into what type of player is really going to be. Led the nation in scoring, despite not being as positive a scorer as Darren. So but there's still plenty to tap in there as well. And I think the Wizards finally do have a real homegrown franchise cornerstone again, and the timeline with him. You expect this to be the guy for the next decade plus, a team that could potentially, and really, I expect to compete for a playoff spot next year. When you talk about Trey Young coming back, Anthony Davis hopefully still is in the fold, and just the continued progression of those young guys. So I think this is a team with AJ who's ready to come in and contribute right away. I think this is a team that should be in that playoff mix, and it's going to be a lot of excitement here in the area. It already has been, honestly.
It really has. Real quick, Jam, Jay Gyro in the chat. One of the, Jay has been someone who's been following us all cycle
Yeah,
long. So
yeah.
shout out to you, Jay. Appreciate the support here. Shout out to everybody. But Jay asked, any news on a few undrafted guys? Darian Williams, Kay Tyson, Trey Carroll. Jay, I don't have these committed to memory, nor do I have these in the show notes. But what I'm gonna do is, in the military, one of the things that we like to say,
Mhm.
Jam, is like, you don't have to know all the answers, but you have to know where to go to get the right answers, right?
Yeah,
And something that I would refer you to, Jay, is one, there's a resource out right now by John Shepkovich over at
yep,
rookiescale.com. He does a great job of this, but I'd be remiss if I didn't also plug Maxwell, our guy Maxwell, who helped cover the second round here for
yep.
No Ceilings. He's going to be doing his acclaimed undrafted free agent roll call that's going to be dropping Monday. So if you're watching this live tomorrow, if you're listening the next day, NoCeilingsNBA.com, Maxwell's going to have you covered. He's going to give a huge list of undrafted free agents, players that he likes, fits, all that and the other. So sorry I can't help you in the immediate, Jay, but hopefully those resources help you out. Jam, the AJ Demancia thing is interesting because he is the prototype. I wrote about that over on the website. That was my article that I wrote about him, was how he is the prototypical type of first round or number one overall draft pick, right? I would be lying though, Jim, if I didn't mention that I have some concerns. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think he's a bust or anything like that. Like, couldn't be further from the truth. But the commitment to Trey Young is kind of confusing to me to a certain extent. And then the kind of wishy-washy nature of like, what are we doing with Anthony Davis? I think veterans with that level of cachet, it can really go one of two ways. There's hardly ever a middle ground with stuff like this, unfortunately. But Trey can embrace the fact that they just drafted a guy who they understand is going to be like the long-standing franchise cornerstone, as you just so eloquently described there. Or he can say, you guys just paid me this handsome amount of money. I'm an all-star. I am the guy. I took a team to the Eastern Conference Finals, and I did it with the team on my back. I had the big performances in Madison Square Garden and all that stuff. And Anthony Davis is already kind of feeling like he's one foot out the door. Just he's trying to find the next door to put the other foot, right? So that kind of concerns me a little bit. And that's just in the immediacy. Like long term, I understand like eventually AJ is going to have the team. It's just a matter of when, right? And you could talk me into the fact that that Trey Young is going to be good for him because he can help organize the team. But I'm more of the mindset that I want AJ to have the on-ball reps to be the best version of himself. Maybe there's a slight acclimation period that you could sell me on, but I want him to have the ball. I want him to go out there and learn, make some mistakes, like play off of Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly, Bub Carrington, Trey Johnson. Alex Sarr, all these other good young players on this team. I want those guys to kind of grow as a young nucleus together. I think these vets could be helpful to a certain extent, but I feel like it's kind of delaying the inevitable, if that makes sense.
I see where you're coming from to a degree. The way I look at it is you need these type of veterans, especially Trey Young. I had no real issues with the max deal that he signed. There seemed to be a market there for him, and it's a max that he could have signed somewhere else too. So I like the way that was negotiated and agreed upon by both sides. And it's a 3-year deal with the player option. So we'll see, what kind of happens there. And for that player option, he'll be 31. So you're really looking at these next 3 years. And I'm totally fine with easing AJ into these on ball reps. Regardless, he's still going to get those with Trey Young or not. So I'm not concerned about that at all. But what a guy like Trey is going to do, not just for AJ, is the rest of the team. Get them in spots, make the game easier for them, take care of a lot of that playmaking and facilitation duty as well too. And Trey can move off the ball at certain times as well too. Then obviously he's not going to play all 48 minutes, so he's going to be on the bench as well too. It's going to be time for AJ and Keyshawn George to handle the ball and do their things as well too. So I'm really loving the direction that they're going. And then just to quite touch on Anthony Davis really quick, it's kind of been mixed signals. You hear that he's maybe looking to leave, maybe looking to stay. So we'll see with that. Ultimately, I do expect for him to stay and kind of at least see how it goes out to the All-Star break. But I mean, I think it's a team that he could be really effective on and really help and really anchor that team if healthy. Of course, that's always the big thing with anyone, but especially AD. But I'm excited about what the future holds in both the short term and long term.
Are you in like it's hard for any rookie just to come and like smooth over every weakness on a team. And I feel like sometimes we lose sight of that. Sometimes we're like, okay, number one overall draft pick, go and do everything. Like make this team like perfect. I feel like sometimes that is a little bit of the narrative that we get from big basketball media. But if we're being honest, Jam, like Trey Young, like isn't the most efficient of the star prospects in the league. AD and Alex are, while they want to space the floor, they're both kind of like low 30s percentage and stuff like that. The wings, like they have a couple of guys that can space the floor. I'm just worried a little bit, Jam. Again, just a little bit, and I'm trying to approach this like in a realistic manner. But I don't know how well constructed this team is to accentuate the strengths of AJ Debassa. Like, do you see any of those concerns as well?
Slightly, I'm not worried about it at all, to be quite honest.
Okay.
That thing's enough shooting, continue to add shooting, obviously, but you have Trey Johnson, Kyson George is obviously a good shooter. Trey Young is there. Sarr can stretch it, maybe not as reliable as you were mentioned, but I think there is enough floor space in there too. He can work two-man gang with AD and also Sarr. He can run as the roll man with Trey Young too and get into some things. So I'm not really worried about none of that.
Okay, fair. Let's talk about your guy Felix Okparo, selected with the 46th pick, I believe, in the second round. A lot of people were really high on the upside of the young big man, especially on the defensive end, as someone who can kind of like do a lot of show and recover probably in the NBA. Even though he's a little bit slight, he plays like with a lot of intensity, very, relentless rebounder, things like that. Do you think that this like if do you think that there's a role for him on this team? Are you optimistic on like what he could look like in the long term? Like, how are you feeling about the second round pick here?
Yeah, it was great to see them add another big to the mix, especially like Akpara. He's someone that a lot of fans have no ceilings, of course. It's an easy role for him to thrive in. Play finisher, shot blocker, could do some good things in space. And I think he has a chance to carve out a role this year. If he doesn't this year, I think going forward he can be an important bench piece in that rotation of the bigs.
All right. So, Jam, that covers the Washington Wizards with their first and second round pick. Let's shift over to the second pick of the draft. And this is where, even us at No Ceilings, we had a little bit of a healthy debate as to like which way the Jazz would go. And ultimately, they overlooked the fact that Carlos Boozer had made statements prior to the draft, obviously having the relationship with his son, things of that nature. The logjam at the front court might have been a little bit too much to just kind of like look over, as the Jazz end up taking a guy who you and I both had number one
Mm-hmm.
on our big boards with Darren Peterson. I think this is the cleanest fit. I know a lot of people have said that they like the whole top four, like where everyone went. And I think that
Yeah.
if you had to pick the order of the top four, that's the way you want to go. But I would say if I had to pick my favorite place for Darren Peterson to land of all of the top four, I think this is it. Because just like we talked about with the Washington Wizards, there's no like, is this guy going to be on this team moving forward? Does he want to be there? There's no Trae Young contract that we're kind of worried about or anything to that degree. Really, the only contract that we got to worry about is Walker Kessler, and I feel like that's just like a ongoing kick this can down the road conversation every year. And hopefully the Jazz can get that worked out. But if that's really the only contract that you're worried about, I feel like this is a good place for Darren to land. There's a shared agency that he has with backcourt mate Keontae George. There's a young nucleus here. There's established veterans. He's got backline help with the Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler, Lauri Markkanen, somebody who could make his life easier as a pick and pop threat, another guy who can make good decisions with the ball in his hands. Again, of all the places that the top four could have gone, to me, for Darren Peterson, he's my favorite fit of the top talent within this year's draft.
Yeah, he's going to have the ball in his hands, as you mentioned, and there's so many things that you laid out is one of the reasons why this is a perfect fit for him. Although Darren obviously wanted to go number one in Washington, this is another really good fit for him. Him and George in the backcourt should be really fun. Good size, strength, length, skill. It's two dynamic guards that they have there. And we'll certainly see those playmaking numbers go up. You working with Triple J, Laurie Markkanen, Walker Kessler in the pick and roll. So I expect for him
Ace
to
Bailey, another name that I just
yeah,
forgot to mention, who's probably going to be starting alongside of him at the 3 spot. Hopefully, we'll see, but
yeah,
a lot of floor spacing.
yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot for him to be able to work with, to be able to have the floor space. So I think has a really good chance to be in that rookie of the year race. It's just chalk here, so no surprise here. I'm not saying anything crazy, but I think AJ or Darren should be the favorites for the rookie of the year, considering obviously where their talent is, then also what their role is going to be on the new teams.
Dirty Dancer, of course, one of the OGs ever,
Mm-hmm.
says the Jazz should suddenly top league pass team with
For
JJJ
sure.
and Darren. I think so too. Like, am I crazy to think that they might be in the play-in this year, Jam? Like, could they be that good this year?
Ooh, that's I don't know. I didn't think about that one. That is a good question. I don't think it's out of question
Like the
because
10th seed in the West? I mean,
especially
I can see it.
if the defense really comes around in that back line, you have Triple J and Walker Kessler, and then the potent guards. Darren's obviously going to make his mistakes, but this is someone that I think can be 15 plus points per game as a rookie, and I think that may be on the lower side, honestly. But I think he's going to be a very productive rookie. There's enough talent there. Ace Bailey take another step there. We saw Isaiah Collier play very well last year too. So yeah, there's a lot of talent there. The West is just tough, so we'll see. But I can see them trying to battle out for that play-in spot.
Bryce Sensabaugh coming in off the bench is like a
Mhm.
microwave, box score filler upper type of
Mhm.
a guy. I mean, they all of a sudden, if they if they could let the coach like actually coach with both hands instead of having two or one of them tied behind his back this year, they got a long way to go. Like, I'm not trying to make it feel like the West is like a cakewalk or anything like that, but again, just going line by line of like who is available on this team, and now all of a sudden they can coach free and easy. I'm pretty high on them at least being a play-in team, which we've seen what that looks like, right? Like with someone as talented as Dylan, Harper in his rookie season, getting those postseason moments. I know some people will discount the play-in as like actual playoff games. It's postseason basketball. Like that's the thing that like you really got to take into consideration. He's essentially like already getting a head start on his sophomore season. As someone who is as stoic as Dylan Harper and someone who fancies himself like as like a silent killer type, he catches his stride, man, on this team, and the floor spacing that they have, the decision makers that they have. Again, I think it could be easy to see them as a 10 seed this year. And I don't feel like I'm asking for a whole lot there either.
Yeah, they'll certainly be in that mix. I'm excited to see what they really look like, and as already mentioned, that is definitely a league pass team that should be getting views early and often. Yes, this is a great one. I'm glad you pulled this up about Line. We talked about this a little bit
Yeah.
to start that second round conversation with James Barlow, who was excellent as always. So I think we'll definitely address this once we get to the Philadelphia pick.
Yeah, and just everybody just hang with us. We're going to go through this. We got a lot of great talking points. I know it might be a little bit of a slow burn and a little bit of a longer show today, but maybe what else we got to do? There's nothing else for y'all to watch, man. Come on, just hang out. You know, I watched Mortal Kombat in my downtime, so y'all can just wait to watch a good movie a little bit later on. Jam, let's not keep the good people waiting. We'll move over to the Memphis Grizzlies, and we'll touch on the number 3 pick, but we'll go ahead and hit on 21 and 32 as well. We'll talk about these guys collectively. There's no sense, in my opinion, of just like breaking it up and talking about it later because we want to talk about everything, right? So, Jam, the Memphis Grizzlies, first off, they moved a couple of, I think, 3 second rounders, and then they brought in Beef Stew, Isaiah Stewart from the Memphis Grizzlies, just adding to the toughness now of this Memphis Grizzlies team in the Western Conference. I mean, that's a theme that we saw play out all through the entire playoffs, especially in the Western Conference. So they trade for Beef Stew for next to nothing. Then, after watching the first 2 picks play out, the Memphis Grizzlies, it didn't take long for them to say, hey, we're not messing around here. Let's just go and get the best available player. I think that we've all kind of half expected it to go this way. And I think the Grizzlies could walk away feeling like they got the best guy in the draft at number 3. I mean, this could be the Jason Tatum draft all over again. So they get him. They get Kareem Lopez at pick 21 through a series of trades. And then in the second round, they get the grandson of the inventor of the tater tot, Richie Saunders himself.
King.
That's it, the tater tot king. I'm sure they make some mean, barbecue tater tots now for him in Memphis. And if anyone does that, you don't got to pay me. Just give me a little bit of credit. But Jam, they walk away with Beef Stew in a trade. They get Cameron Boozer. They get Kareem Lopez. They get Richie Saunders. What do you think of the Memphis Grizzlies, the way that they've been making moves so far in their offseason?
Yeah, they have been off to a terrific start to the offseason, and we haven't really gotten into free agency right now. As you mentioned, getting Beef Stew, this is someone who kind of reminds me a lot of that Memphis grit and grind type of feel. Like we know like he's going to be physical, he's going to be in your face, he's going to bring the energy. Very much one of those guys that like you probably hate him when you're not playing when he's not on your team, and then when he's on your team, you absolutely love him. And he is someone that's going to run through a brick wall for his team. And he shot just at a pretty good clip this year, 33% on decent volume, 2.1 attempts per game. So the ability to stretch the floor is there. And when you have him and Boozer potentially playing next to each other, when they kind of go small ball 5 for either one of them. But yeah, don't want to bury the lead too much with Cam Boozer here at number 3. Memphis obviously feels like they have a good chance to end up with the best player in the class. Someone is obviously an analytical darling, passes the analytical test, the eye test. Everything is there for Cam Boozer, despite I know that some believe that the offensive upside is a bit limited. As we talked about all throughout the cycle, I'm not in that camp. And I think that there is some shot creation stuff for him to continue to unlock. And then also his ability to play in the pick and roll. He just can score in a variety of different ways, even if people don't feel like the pure shot creation is there, but he can be versatile in his scoring. So I think at the very least, that's a nice compensated factor to his game. And you have Kareem Lopez. I wasn't the biggest fan of him. I know you were a little higher on him as well too, but that's a good bet on someone just with that type of size, the length. The shooting does have to come around, obviously, but the form doesn't look terrible too. And then last for Richie Saunders, as you mentioned, them continuing to add shooting. That's going to be huge around guys like Edie. We'll see if Ja Morant ends up staying because that contract does not look tradable right now. And personally, I still like Ja. I could be on an island like that. I would
Let's
love
dive
to see.
into that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it appears that there's not much of a market, as you just touched on, and a lot of the point guard needy teams assumedly just drafted their guys, right? So it almost feels like you're either just salary dumping him, and I don't know if I would attach assets to move off of John Morant. Like
Exactly.
I would have to know way more than what I know now to feel comfortable with doing that. And there might be that information available. I'm not going to dismiss that, but
Mhm.
just me being an observer of the game, I'm not attaching assets to move off of John Morant. Like I'm at this point, it's like, well, let's see what we can do about getting his trade value back up at the very minimum.
Absolutely. And then you don't even if you're looking to do for trade value, I think there's a strong chance like, hey, like, all right, this is Ja. He may not be like at the peak of his powers. Maybe that has gone past. That remains to be seen. But I still think he is an all-star level guard in the league right now. So I can still put pressure on the rim. And then you bring Boozer with the floor spacing and run pick and roll with him as well, too. Cedric Howard continue to develop there as well, too. So I think there's still a lot for him to be able to contribute to this team, especially one that is continuing to get better and you expect to be in that playoff mix.
Were you at all surprised that they didn't go after a point guard? Because I know that they have depth. I've said that several times
Mhm.
here and I've written about it and stuff like that. But it almost felt like it was a sure thing that the Grizzlies were going to walk away with a point guard. They had 3 draft picks. You can argue that Boozer was a point guard in college. I get that, right? But they didn't walk away with one. And I know that they have guys on their roster who have been playing and playing well at the point guard spot, and some guys could continue to ascend. And,
Yeah,
oh, by the way, John Morant's still on this team. I don't know if the fact that
exactly.
they didn't draft a point guard is kind of a smoke signal saying we can expect John Morant to be playing a sizable role on this team this year.
I'm not surprised at all that they didn't draft a point guard. As you mentioned, Josh still on the team. It was unlikely they were going to be able to move. We'll see what happens as we get deeper into the offseason, but without attaching an asset there. So you still have him in place. And then if you do bring in a rookie there, how much they're really going to play, you still have Ty Jerome, who's been really fantastic for them as well. Scottie Pippen Jr. is on the
Love
roster.
Scotty.
Um,
Yep.
s- um, Walter Clayton Jr. is there too as well. Those guys can both play on and off the ball, but still guys that can handle the ball, play that point guard position. Cam Spencer's a guy that can run
Yep.
pick and roll and facilitate the offense too. So I think there is enough there. And then at the points that they were at in the draft, my assumption is it was just like, hey, none of these point guards here are at the level we feel like they can come in and contribute maybe year one or year two, especially with what we have. And there's higher players on their board that they wanted to go with.
I think the defense is going to be something that people are going to want to monitor, especially within the front court. We've talked about Cam Boozer's foot speed, playing the 4 at the next level. He's a smart guy. I'm not discounting the intelligence, the basketball IQ, and stuff like that. But sometimes you got to make a play, like based off of sheer instinct and athleticism. Do you have the foot speed, the closing speed? What's your change of direction looking like? Are we concerned about the weight? Do we try to get him a little bit lighter? How much power does that take away from him? And then you got Zach Edey, who's not the most fleet of foot guy either. Real drop big. You typically want to funnel guys to him. Not the most healthy. I understand that they got Beef Stew, who is a pretty credible and capable defender, but he's going to be coming off the bench. Santi Aldama is a guy who's an intelligent defender, but not the most fleet of foot. So I don't know what their defense is going to look like. I know some people, whenever they're high on a player and he's not the best defender, they'll mention, obviously that rebounding is also a part of defense. And Cameron Boozer and Zach Edey are fantastic rebounders. But do you think that they're going to have to rely on their rebounding to be the emphasis of their defense?
I think it's that and the physicality are those are the two things they have to rely upon. Talk about the 4 and 5. Boozer and Edie, strong with good size. They're physical as well too. On Boozer's end, their quick hands. I think that's what they're going to have to rely upon. Cedric Howard on perimeter has all the tools to continue to show that he's going to be a good perimeter defender as well too. So they do need to take a step up there. There are going to be some growing pains, but I think there is enough to believe in right now.
Okay, fair. Let's move on now. The Chicago Bulls, the team of Corey Tulaba, they did them well. They didn't surprise them. They didn't go crazy off the board, anything like that. It might have been the second easiest decision in the draft by letting Caleb Wilson fall to them at 4. They go and take him. They also drafted Dalen Swain, which I'm gonna kind of sidetrack here a little bit, Jam. A lot of people were bored with this draft and said, there really wasn't a bunch of surprises. Like, I couldn't disagree with that more. Like, Nate Ament wasn't drafted in the top 10, and there were 3 teams that he was rumored to be going to within that top 10. Like, he ultimately did go to one of those teams, but he was rumored to be there at 10. Dalen Swain going to Chicago Bulls. A lot of people didn't have this, like, at all. Like, this was a pretty interesting pick. And then we'll talk about JQ later, but no one knew where he was going to go, so I don't know how you can say that everything went chalk if you literally had no idea where one of the most high upside guys in the draft was going to fall. I digress. The Chicago Bulls, they draft Caleb Wilson at 4. They get Dalen Swain at 15. I know that they're going off this slap model jam, and I think that they checked a lot of those boxes. I really love the Caleb Wilson pairing on this team. Not to mention, they also traded to acquire Nick Claxton in the 3-team deal. Him coming over from the Brooklyn Nets. That's a really good backup big man for them to get. If they can find a way to keep Jalen Smith on this team, you got a different look. You think that Nick Claxton is going to start?
Yeah.
Okay. I like that a lot. So they got some different looks that they can give. Obviously, Matas Buzelis is going to be a big focal point of this team. They also got Essingway. They got Leonard Miller. They got Josh Giddey. Like, they weren't kidding. It's a capital S for slap jam. Like, they got size across the board. What do you make of the draft as a whole, and obviously Caleb Wilson being on this team?
Yeah, Caleb Wilson and Cam Boozer, I know, are their prime targets, and whichever one kind of fell there, Memphis thought they were going to go with Caleb Wilson, but Caleb Wilson goes to Chicago. It gives them someone that fits that slap model, of course. There's so much to love about the defensive tools and the offensive upside, just the athleticism, the evolving ball skills, and as well as the playmaking field they bring offensively, and that mid-range shot making ability. Has that go-to turnaround jumper, really comfortable facing up and attacking as well too. So I think he can really own that mid-range game with his ability to hit shots there and take guys off the bounce and finish. And we'll see what happens with him as a shooter and what type of trajectory he has there. I believe in the touch. I know you do as well. So I think he is eventually going to be a guy that can be relied upon to hit open threes. And then with him and Claxton at the 4 and 5, these are 2 guys, long, athletic, and getting passing lanes, quick hands. They'll hit the glass. There's a little bit of grab and go with Claxton, but more so with Caleb Wilson. So I think that is there. And then also you pair that those guys to 4 or 5 and kind of complete the front court with Buzelis at the 3. Like, it's a lot of length. There's great size there too for them to really work with. So I think in Singway as well, I'm glad you brought him up too. We'll see what it looks like for him another year. There's so many tools with him, with the length, the ball skills, the athleticism. And of course, Josh Giddey leading the way, kind of making things easier for everyone as well too. The Bulls still in that rebuilding phase. Don't expect them to be in there competing for the play-in or anything like that. But I think they're taking a huge step forward, and we'll see what it looks like for them in the 2027 draft to continue to add pieces and then eventually be ready to roll in 28, 29.
Zoom as 1009. I clicked on the wrong thing, but he believes that the rookie of the year will go to Wagler. We'll get to Wagler here in just a
Yes, we
second.
will.
Dirty Dancer, though, says if your model doesn't include shooting, it is a bad model. I don't necessarily disagree in this. I mentioned Jalen Smith earlier, and I'm not going to sit here and advocate maybe he should start over Claxton or anything like that. I hope the Bulls get him because that's one of the more difficult things to find is to get a floor spacing big man, especially if one of the things that you're concerned about your franchise cornerstones
Mhm.
right now with Buzelis and Wilson is their shooting ability. I think that's going to be something that you're looking to build out. Hopefully Buzelis a little bit sooner than Caleb. But I really like having Jalen come back to this team just to give them a little bit more floor spacing at that position to make life a little bit easier on the pick and roll runs that you're going to run between Giddy and Caleb or Matas and Caleb or anybody and Caleb because Caleb is like Amari Stoudemire 2.0 in my opinion. I started watching some Amari film just because he's one of my favorite players ever. I see so many correlations in their game. I hope that Caleb can take out that 3-point shot, and I hope that he can be a highly impactful defender as well. But without floor spacing, I think to Dirty Dancer's point, there's just a lot of tools, but can they be actualized? Leonard Miller was a solid 3-point shooter on this team. I think he shot like 36% from deep, and we saw Josh Giddey, get off to a blistering start whenever he first got to the team as well. So I want to see how much improvements they can add to the 3-point shot, but I think they got all the capabilities of being one of the top defensive teams in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, they do. And then Swain, didn't want to get a chance to touch on him now.
Oh
He's
yes,
going
please
to
do.
he's going to add to that defensive prowess. I think there is still a lot for him to tap into defensively. We saw more so Xavier than Texas, so I still think that is in for him as well. That was a surprise that you mentioned, especially there for a team like Chicago that needs more shooting, and he doesn't exactly provide that, at least right now. But I think that's going to be a very interesting swing. I'm imagining he's someone that they will actually let play with the ball in his hands, and that was a little bit of a question, I think, at some potential other destinations for him. And if you want to kind of capitalize on what the upside could be for Dalen Swain, he's going to need to play with the ball in his hands, and I think he'll have the opportunity to do that with Chicago.
I do too, and I'm glad that you brought him up. I think that's going to be one of the biggest questions that we have with Swain is like, what's the role going to be on this team? Could you see him play the two on this team? And if you could, then you got a potential lineup of Giddy, Swain, Buzelis, Wilson, and then either Claxton or Smith or someone along those lines. I think that this team gets really big really quickly. And I think too for Swain, the shooting is like the biggest question mark with him. But
Yeah.
if you let him operate with the ball in his hand, he was a fairly decent shot like shooter off the dribble. You let him run these pick and roll actions. If he can get to that step back, he's shown that he could be a capable floor spacer as well. So I'm with you on that.
And
So
then one last thing with
please,
Chicago, I think Brazil Poplar brings up a great point about their undrafted free agents and Toby Walker bringing a presence inside. They get some of that shooting that could potentially make the roster. Donovan Atwell and Jalen
yep.
Sellers, two guys that we both saw in Portsmouth as well too, lefties that can shoot the ball and have some tough shot making ability. I do believe they also added Houston Millette, who is a shot maker from the perimeter too. So they are adding some shooting on the margins, and these are going to be guys that, if you do hit, they have a very specific role for that team, and they'll be on cheap contracts.
And even if they are two ways or whatever, the Bulls have enough salary cap to where they can get out in front of them and give them those previous Isaiah Joe deals where it's like a couple million a year for 3-4 years, like those real low Aaron Wiggins type contracts that the Oklahoma City Thunder was giving out. So they're two-way guys. The Bulls could eventually look to do the same thing with some of those margin players as well.
Yep.
Good shout there, Jam. Let's move now to the fifth pick. The LA Clippers drafted the biggest riser of the cycle, right? Keaton Wagler, Mr. Irrelevant to Mr. Undeniable here. I think that he fits an immediate need for the LA Clippers, but they also drafted, they went to work. They got Baba Miller with their first second round pick, and I had him in my first round, a top 30 guy. They did draft Henry Vasar, traded him to Atlanta. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But they also had a pretty controversial second round pick, Jam, where they drafted Narcisse Ngoy, who was the 57th pick, and then they just announced that he was going to be stashed in college. Like, I think that's a whole podcast right there. So I just want to mention it. There's a lot of things that where essentially the Clippers now will have the rights, but he's going to go play college. Like, there's no NBA money going to him. He's going to get NIL money. But when he decides to go pro, the Clippers are going to have his rights. So that's at least trade fodder for them at a minimum. But Keaton Wagler at the top, Jam. I think that, pick 5 was where a lot of people said that the draft was going to start. And the draft started with the Clippers getting him. There was some smoke as to maybe we like Darius A. Cup Jr., Sacramento Kings, so if you want him, you're going to have to trade up and get him. There was a little bit of Michael Brown smoke as well. But the Clippers getting Keaton Wagler to play alongside Darius Garland, Kawhi Leonard, Ivica Zubac and company. How are we feeling about that?
Yeah, Wagler who's number 6 on my board behind Michael Brown Jr. Going at the 5th spot here for the Clippers. Really good fit here, as most of these guys are, really, especially the top of the draft. Somebody can play with Darius Garland, can slide over and play the 1 as well. I know there are some people that have reservations about Wagler playing the 1, just wanting a guy that plays that position that provides more paint touches on their own, and I totally get that. And I think for him, he's going to have to play with some guys that can create some paint touches too, and not just run pick and roll. But his ability to play both backcourt positions, maybe some of the 3 in certain matchups as well too, it allows him to have this positional versatility on top of his ability to stretch the floor, to operate pick and rolls, to be a better passer than I think that he gets credit for as well too. The Clippers will be very interesting. We'll see if Kawhi is there. That kind of changes the whole outlook on the team. There's been some strong rumored interest by the Toronto Raptors and potentially getting a deal done. So I think that kind of really changes what that team looks like, obviously, in the short term. From a team probably that's wanting to compete for a playoff spot and everyone can stay healthy, to one that, probably be right back in the lottery and probably back in the top 10, depending how the ping pong balls fall. But I do like Wagler. He's going to be able to have a chance to have the ball in his hands too, play off of it. And as I mentioned with Kawhi Leonard, probably on his way out, if that happens, he's going to have more usage. And then I forgot who was in the chat, but was speaking of Wagler potentially being a Rookie of the Year. I think that is more of a possibility, obviously, if Leonard is gone.
Yeah, and I got corrected Zubac on the Pacers. You're 100% right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's how the Clippers ended up getting the pick, so I appreciate the backup on that one, BCW. Jay Gyro says, I'd be surprised if Kawhi's on the Clippers this year. Trade talks heating up. Dirty Dancer says they should trade him. It's all going to come down to Kawhi, man. I mean, for as long as I remember, I'll speak for myself, Jam, is that he wants to be in California. He's a California guy. He did not want to go to Toronto. He was like, hey, if you trade for me, I'm leaving and I'm going to LA. And I mean, I like the Raptors.
Forthcoming. Like, I appreciate that. Like, if you are operating the front office and he's telling you, like, hey, this is what it is, I got nothing but respect for that.
Yeah, and like, I don't mean that in any negative manner. I only say that to say that, like, do we ever know what Kawhi is wanting to do? Like, ever? Yeah, and I feel like the more that I hear about these trade stuff come out, I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, he was rumored to go to the Lakers to team up with LeBron before he went to Toronto, right, and won a ring. So, and he ultimately did end up going to LA. And maybe it is the Lakers, especially if they're wanting to get off of LeBron too. Like, if he does get traded, is he just going to go the next
I don't think
stadium over.
I don't think the Clippers will ever do that.
I don't know, man. I think that if both of those guys say that that's what they want to have happen, I don't know if either one of those organizations are going to tell them no. You
Yeah, I
know
just
what I
don't
mean?
see either one of guys wanting to do that, like LeBron playing for the Clippers. I just don't see that. And what I do like about Kawhi too, the two rumored teams are the Raptors and the Spurs, and that makes
I've seen
sense.
the Pistons too.
It's but as far as that he will go and sign a contract extension, the Pistons were one rumor that he wouldn't want to sign a contract extension, but the ones that he wants to sign a contract extension reportedly are with those two teams, and it makes sense because not only do they have a chance of really competing, more so the Spurs obviously than the Raptors, but it's two franchises that he's familiar with. There's not going to be a whole lot of mystery, like he knows what to expect from the organization itself, although Masai's gone, of course, with the Raptors, but still Webster's there and a lot of that infrastructure. And then just knowing the city as well, so that makes a lot of sense to go back to familiar surroundings.
Hey, Jay Gyro in the chat, you mentioned no Masai Ujiri. He's in Dallas, and I did see that floating around the timeline too. That's my thing is like there's so much, and our team's gonna want to trade for him right now. And we're turning into a talking head show. I love it, but our team's gonna want to trade for him with the aspiration thing still up in the air. Like that's the biggest thing that I think that's the biggest shoe that we're waiting to
I think
drop.
so. I think that if the NBA were going to make a move, I think they were going to do it by now. So I wouldn't be too concerned prior, especially before the draft and things like that. If the Clippers were going to get compensation taken away and the contract being void and all that other stuff they were talking about, but right now I think the Clippers look to be in the clear.
I hope so. I mean, Adam Silver, when he wants to move, he does it quick. It felt like the whole draft reform thing happened like super fast. One day we were talking about expansion, and then it felt like the next week he's like, I'm gonna fix this stuff. And
Hmm.
then like within a couple weeks, it was a new thing that we were focused on. So I don't know. Keaton Wagler, though, I think if everything stays as is right now with this team, I kind of like his fit between Garland and Kawhi. And Kawhi, to his credit, did play 65 games last year. He was a
Yep,
very reliable player. He
it
had
looked
a
great.
really looked great. Had an All NBA type season. Did get I think he finished seventh, if I'm not mistaken, in like MVP voting and stuff like that. So, a fantastic year from him. I think obviously he would make life easier for Keaton Wagler as well as some of the other players on that team. Jam, the Brooklyn Nets at 6. They drafted Michael Brown Jr. They also got back into the draft to get Josh Jefferson incoming from Minnesota. And then in the second round, they also brought in Tyler Bilodeau for another program here. Did the Nets get their franchise lead guard? And if so, how are we feeling about his outlook playing for this franchise?
Yeah, I absolutely think that they have. I've been a fan of Michael Brown Jr. all year. Been in that fifth spot for me for the wide majority of the cycle. After starting in that fourth spot. But I think this is a guy with the size, the athleticism, the length, the ball skills, creativity, the best passer in the class, in my opinion, as well, too, the most level shot making. All that is there for him to be the top guard in this class, outside of Darren Peterson, in my opinion. And this is a guy that can play on and off the ball. Obviously, the upside is tied to him playing on the ball, but he works with the guys like Jaeger Yeoman, of course, and then Danny Wolf being able to get situated in there too. And it seems like what Brooklyn is building are a lot of guys at different spots on the floor. They can shoot, dribble, and pass, and obviously that's what you want to do. And with Michael, you can kind of really take that formal role as the lead guard and kind of really splitting those with Yeoman as well. I think that's going to be kind of the approach there and let everything else kind of play around that. Did you like that selection there? Do you see them as the lead guard there? I know you are a Darius Acuff fan who we'll kind of get to after Sacramento, but do you think that should have been the selection as opposed to Michael?
I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, Jam, which is something that I really do try to avoid. He was the second best guard on my board like in the same tier as Darius. So if you like him better, then you got the number one guard, and I'm cool with that, right?
Mhm.
So did they get the guy that they should have got if they thought he was the best guard? Yes. But if I'm being honest, like I hate it for him. Like I hate him going to Brooklyn. And this is not me trying to like crap on Nets fans or the team or anything like that. But Michael Porter Jr. is on this team for now. We'll see if a team who wants to contend gets desperate and wants to trade for a 7 foot floor spacer, which those guys are always in vogue. And then they just traded to bring in Julius Randle from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now you can
Yep.
argue
Yep.
that, well, they got a first round pick for doing that. Minnesota only moved back 5 spots to to offload Julius Randle. I feel like you probably got waxed a little bit if you're the Nets there. So, and he might be nice for this team. Like he's
They
if
also
I'm
got a
if
first round pick in the deal, correct?
I thought that they ended up getting the Minnesota's first round pick, but then they also sent their second for this year to Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I'm okay as long as they got that first round pick back. So I think that was kind of
Yeah.
more important to them than that second rounder.
Yeah, but I mean, that's 5 spots apart. You know what I mean? And you can make the case that Minnesota got the best shooter in the draft in the second round, too, with Isaiah Evans, right? So, um, you did all of those things. Like, I just don't know how easy Michael's life is going to be on this team. And, that's the name of the game. I think that he's a bright spot on this team moving forward.
Yep.
I just think that he's going to have his work cut out for him, like with this roster, if that makes sense, Jam.
I just like the fit on the roster. He as Dirty Dancer in the chat. I'm right there with you. What's up, Guilty? I definitely appreciate you stopping by. One of the great Chicago Bulls creators in the space. In there, we just talked about the Bulls. But yeah, with Dirty Dancer talking about Michael, yeah, I'm totally in agreement with that. There's less pressure there, and you still are in New York. You have other guys that are going to handle the ball. Julius Randle, as you mentioned, is going to be having the ball in his hands as well too. So I really do like the situation a lot for Michael. He's going to grow into that, and there's not a lot of pressure there, honestly.
Okay. Any thoughts on Joshua Jefferson and Tyler Bilodeau's outlook on the roster?
For sure, they needed to add some more shooting, and you get that with Tyler Bilodeau, 6'9", over 7'1" wingspan. I believe shot 40% from three. Like a fan of his. Like that's a swing that I'm always willing to take. That combination of size and shooting, and you kind of hope he can use those defensive tools to survive on that end. And Joshua Jefferson, I was a little surprised to see him go there, but I think that fits into what they want to do. Continue to get a lot of playmakers on the court and to be able to operate on different planes of the court, so in different levels of court. So I like Jefferson here for his ability, although I was surprised, but his ability to be able to run offense through. I think him and Danny Wolf can do some fun things at the 4 and 5 with their passing ability and functional handle. So I think at this point, almost the Wizards, but the Nets are really just collecting guys that can do a bunch of different things, and we'll see how that eventually kind of melds together.
I love that. Yeah, if we've learned anything from the Nets recently, is they love guys who can do a point guard impersonation, and Joshua Jefferson certainly does that. All right, I've gone too long without talking about my favorite point guard in this draft, Jam, and that's just because it's the way that the draft fell. But the Sacramento Kings get Darius Acuff Jr.,
Yeah.
who projects to be an offensive engine on this team. They also traded back up into the first round to get their guy. A lot of rumors about Alex Caravan being the apple of this team's eye. They didn't wait around for him to hopefully fall to them at the top of the second. They trade back into the first round to get Alex Caravan. And then at pick 45, they get Emmanuel Sharp, who is a pretty good 3-and-D talent to just bring into this team. Jim, I'm going to ask you, there are some really interesting players on this team for Darius Acuff to play next to. I think the DHO game with him and Sabonis is going to be so much fun to watch. I think the pick and roll game with him and Dylan Cardwell, I can see him throwing a million lobs to Cardwell if they're ever on the floor together. And then they got the pick and pop game with him and Reynaud. There's some interesting younger players on this team, but they also have Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, an eclectic talent of young and old on this roster. How do you think Acuff fares in this team?
Yeah, it's honestly a little too early to say, only because there's still some moving parts, as you mentioned. I'm not sure if DeRozan will quite be there. Sabonis could still be in trade talks. They've long wanted to get off of Zach LaVine. Maybe that's something that happens more at the trade deadline, but we'll see what happens there. But he is a guy that should have the ball in his hands, despite having Levine there and Sabonis. But at that guard spot, you have Devin Carter if he can take a step forward, Killian Hayes if he can kind of get another shot there, and Unique Clifford is not a point guard, but can handle and do some things. But it's setting the stage for Darius to be able to have that usage in a very similar role to what he had at Arkansas, to be able to score, play make, play through mistakes and everything like that. And as you mentioned, if Sabonis does stay, that would be a heck of a pick and roll partner for him, and the two-man game and things that they can do there. And I think the biggest thing I want to see from Acuff is if he can find different ways just to continue to bring the best out of that team on and off the court, and what type of energy and just enthusiasm that he can bring to that franchise that are really looking for that. This is a team that has not won in a while. They're looking for the ways to light the beam once again and kind of to get back on there. So I think he's a fantastic piece to add there. And then on along the same lines, you add Caravan and Sharp. These are two guys that know how to win. They're gritty. They can space the floor, and I think there's a easily complementary role that they can play from jump.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. The Kings brought in 3 winners,
Mhm.
Arkansas did their fair share of winning. Caravan is a national champion. Manuel Sharp has been on those Coach Sampson teams who have seen some great success in their own right. Bringing in just dudes that know how to win, I think that's the biggest thing that people are looking to imitate from Jalen Brunson's rise into being a champion at every level of basketball. One of only a few people who can do that. I just I mean, I've made my thoughts of Darius Acuff Jr. well known. Didn't like him coming into the year. I had my doubts. He won me over around the January timeframe. I think that I could see a little bit of an adjustment period, kind of like what I talked about with
Or
Washington. Like
yeah.
if I'm drinking my truth serum here and taking my Arkansas red rose colored lenses off real quick, I think that with DeMar and Levine and Sabonis on this team, I could see him playing off of those guys. But I think one of the biggest aspects of his game that went under discussed was his ability to play off of guys because of how much he had to do on the ball. I think he and Sabonis in a DHO set, like if you have somebody else have the ball on the opposite end, you're running an off screen action with Sabonis, or even if you swing the ball to Sabonis like on the elbow or the high post or whatever, and then just have Acuff hit a rub action off of him, he could pull up and rise and knock down the long ball. So I think that those are
Yeah.
some interesting sets that you can run with this team.
Yeah, you certainly can. And I saw about the defense, of course, with Acuff, and I think just in general, that's going to be an issue with Sacramento. You have Carwell in the back line, of course, but I don't think he's that fearsome of a shot blocker, kind of rim protector. Certainly not an anchor. Murray as well too. But yeah, that's that back line and the defensive end as a whole. They're going to need some help there to help Acuff, and then just in general, they don't have that infrastructure right there just yet.
For sure. And then Devin Rose mentions, did we discuss Morris Johnson? Not yet. We're not at Dallas. We're still in Sacramento, wrapping up right now.
Getting there.
We're about to hit Atlanta. We're chewing on a lot for the show, guys. I hope that y'all are ready. But there's a lot to discuss from over the past couple of days since the draft and even before it. Let's talk about Atlanta, because there are other teams that you can make the case that they quote unquote won the draft. They didn't take guys that I necessarily had like the best available whenever they were on the clock, Jam. But looking at it and the players that they selected and how they fit their system, I think Atlanta had one of the better drafts in the entire night, man. I mean, they got Kingston Flemings with the eighth pick. Wasn't my favorite point guard prospect. I've made that well known, but I love the fit for him in Atlanta. Zuby Ejiofor at 23, and then the weird Henri Vesar falling to 52 to the Clippers, and then getting moved over to the Atlanta Hawks. Really strange. They also did a good job of acquiring Aaron Wiggins in the move with the Oklahoma City Thunder for a couple of second round picks. And then they're bringing back CJ McCollum, which also adds to the layer of me loving them getting a guy like Kingston Flemings. Bottom line, Jam, I really loved everything that the Hawks did.
Yeah, if you're a Hawks fan, you should be really excited about what they did draft day, and then of course trading for Wiggins, bringing in, re-signing, excuse me, CJ, bringing him back as well, and Flemings brings just a different element that they need from that guard spot. He's someone who can create paint touches on his own, push the pace in transition. Him working the two-man game with Jalen Johnson should be a lot of fun as well. And he can work with Nickeil Alexander-Walker as well, too, in that backcourt, Dyson Daniels. So there's a lot to really like there. And he won't need to do it on his own from right away, as we mentioned, just with the supporting guys that he have there at that point guard spot, kind of oscillate between the one and the two. And then with the two bigs that they add, two different types of bigs that adds to their rotation with Okongwu and Mohamed Gay as well too. And Zuby, man, like just a rocked up guy, tough, can switch, defend in space, shown he can shoot the jumper a little bit from mid-range and from three as well too when left open, can score in the post, but mainly his impact is going to be felt as a defender and on the glass too. And then Vesar, very surprised that he fell this far, someone that I had as a first rounder in the 20s as well, but he can pick and pop. He give you some short roll stuff with the touch and the playmaking there too, some DHO things. So a very skilled big at 7 feet that can help space the floor for these guys like Flemings and Jalen Johnson and Kuminga as well too. You know, so there's a lot for him
So
to
many
be.
names.
Yeah, it's just a lot of talent
They have
on the.
Kispert too, yeah.
Yes, they do. So shooting, they have a lot of things covered. So I think the future is very, very bright, both the present and the future for Atlanta.
Man, I love it so much. And the things that I was worried about with Kingston and everything that we talked about with him all year long about, yeah, he could get to that elbow and pull up. He didn't get to the rim that much because of the two big men that Houston employed. To your point, and I love the fact that you mentioned the different looks that they can give with this team. Onyeka shot last year. Vesar can shoot. I think that you could play five out on this team now, and we'll get to see whether or not Flemings can finish at the rim at a high level with that level of speed and athleticism. If you're worried about him being a primary point guard, you don't gotta be, because Jalen Johnson's giving out 8 assists. You know, CJ McCollum is giving out 3 to 4 assists. Nickeil Alexander Walker's giving out 3 to 4 assists.
Mhm.
You know, Dyson Daniels is giving
Yeah.
out 3 to 4 assists. Like, the team is the point guard, and I think that he he is going to function so well on that team. Zuby, just a hustle guy, an effort guy who is going to help this team compete, give them different looks. We already talked about Vesar. Wiggins is somewhere on this team, acquired for a couple of second round picks. That's good
Mhm.
business if you're Atlanta as well. Dude, and I got to give my guy Devin Rose in the chat. We're going to get to a question that he asked earlier, but he said
Yeah.
Atlanta's got a tough road ahead of them, making the playoffs, competing in the competitive East. They made the playoffs last year, and they had a bit of an identity crisis moving off of Trae Young, and they were a little bit starstruck once they made it to the playoffs. I think, man, if they don't, something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. I just think that they're too talented to not make the playoffs in the East, Jam.
These are still tough though, to Devin's point, you know.
It is. I'm not trying to discount the depth. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the key right there is Jalen Johnson taking another step forward. This guy was flirting with triple doubles. It felt like on a nightly basis, and is looking like a perennial all star in this league.
Yeah, and then Dirty Dancer says Hawks the only team to take 2 from the world champs. There we
And
go.
another one from Dirty Dancer too, man. I will admit it, being a Lakers fan as well too. Them going and stealing Baysar as well. 'Cause I was like, is this really about to happen for the Lakers in the draft? About to get Cam Carr and then Baysar as well too, and guys that can really work with Luca and Austin Reeves and hopefully LeBron coming back. But Atlanta had other plans, and good for them.
They sure did. All right, let's hit this quick break, Jam, and then we'll be right back to talk about the Dallas Mavericks, Milwaukee Bucks, so on and so forth. Let's still so much fun to get to. Guys, while we're hitting this break, go get you some water, get you a snack, and come right back. We're going to talk about all the things that you want to talk about from the draft and through the early part of free agency right on the other side of this break. All right, we are back here live on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show here on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel. We're also on your podcast player of choice. Jam and I, we've been talking about everything that's gone on from picks 1 through 8, the teams associated with that. If they made multiple picks, we talked about those multiple picks. If they made big moves in terms of re-signing and trades, we talked about those re-signing and trades as of note. And we are right back here to talk about the Dallas Mavericks, Jam, who splashy offseason. They bring in Dusty May, who was a upset win over Tennessee while coaching FAU away from potentially not being the Dallas Mavericks head coach. But sometimes, man, the universe works in the way that it works. And here we are now talking about Dusty May, the defending NCAA championship winning head coach, leaving the Michigan Wolverines. Shout out to Tyler Metcalf to go and coach the Dallas Mavericks, who have, you might have heard of Cooper Flag, that looks like they're going to retain Kyrie Irving in the meantime. There's some will they, won't they Klay Thompson trades out there. Najee Marshall made an impact on this roster. Derek Lively hopefully is healthy and returns soon. PJ Washington is still a part of this team. Christie, so on and so forth. Dusty May had his pick of any Michigan front court player that he wanted at his disposal, Jam. And just like our guy Tyler Metcalf projected many, many months ago when nobody else was saying the same thing, he said that Morris Johnson Jr. was going to be the first Michigan prospect drafted in the 2026 NBA draft. And that's what happened, Jam. The Mavericks picked him 9th overall. They also drafted Sergio De La Rey in an acquisition with the New York Knicks. They got our guy Toby Wall. And then they also got Vesval Doshenko coming in from Russia. And there was a lot of intel out saying that he was heavily linked with this team. Our guy, real quick, let me call him up. Devin Rose 5 did ask in the post that we put on Twitter. He asked basically, it was a long post, so I'm going to abbreviate it here, Devin, but he was mentioning that a lot of people didn't necessarily like the Morris Johnson Jr. Pick, and he feels like he loved it, and he's going to be an impactful player on this team. There's a lot to talk about there, Jam. Let's talk about Morez, though. Do we like the pick when it happened? Do we think that he can play a sizable role for this team? You're muted, brother.
I think he's going to play a sizable role from day one. Probably not in a starting role, but I can see him eventually by the end of his rookie season, maybe shortly after the All-Star break, someone that's being trusted to close games. He measured better than expected at the NBA Combine. Although you may want just a little bit more positional size, but I think he's pretty much right there, for him to be your center. But he's physical. The motor is just top notch. He's going to be on the glass on both ends of the floor. There's good touch around the rim as well, too. The jumper form looks pretty good. I don't think that is out of the question. That's something that Mike Smith talked about when they're talking about his upside and drafting him as well too. But the impact immediately is going to be felt on that defensive end and as a play finisher. And when you're talking about Derek Lively still recovering, you don't know where he's going to be at for sure. Daniel Gafford as well too. Just trying to get more bigs in that mix. You have PJ Washington, but more guys that can play that 5. and give you that defensive presence while also being a play finisher as well. You have Cooper there, obviously. So them continuing to build that defensive identity, I think is going to be crucial.
Yeah, and shout out, there's a lot of people just tuning in. Sonny K says, "Hey guys, who are we talking about? We are talking about Morris Johnson Jr., not Kai
Mhm.
Soto. Godfrey Dorio, Hortzuela is begging us to talk about Kai Soto. That's not going to happen on this podcast, brother. I'm just going to let you know that now. Um,
Maybe the next few weeks when we get the 2027 stuff.
Maybe we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think a lot of people are just gonna say that Dusty May walked in and was like, "Listen here, Masai Ujiri. Listen here, Mike Schmitz. We're gonna be taking this guy, and that's it. These are the terms of my contract negotiation." I think that obviously getting to coach Cooper Flag is probably a big enough sway for a lot of people who want to be in Dallas, right? Kyrie Irving also being a part of this team as well. I do think that he did play a part in maybe bringing in intel as to which of the big men that Dallas might have preferred. He might have helped sway a decision. I don't think that he necessarily walked in and put his you know what on the table and said, "Hey, this is what we're gonna do," right? So, I love the defensive identity that you just laid out, Jam. I think that his growth of the 3-point shooter this year. I think that's real, and it's going to be something that Dallas does ask of him. And I think bringing in someone who can defend to the degree that he can, that's going to allow Cooper to, who is a good defender in his own right, but he's going to be able to not necessarily have to be defending the best player on the other team while also simultaneously being the offensive option number one on his team. There's a lot of Sergio De La Rey questions being asked in the chat too, Jam. Do you think he is a this year guy? Do you think that he is someone that's heavily utilized on this team moving forward? What are your initial thoughts here?
Yeah, that's interesting to see what they exactly do with him. I think they will probably keep him over there one more year, but we'll see if that's what they want to do. For those who don't know, is currently playing in Spain, but it's a pass, dribble, shoot guard at 6'6". I think there's a lot to like about him. There are athletic limitations and defensive concerns, but when you have someone with that positional size, the passing and the shooting, he should be able to eventually get a chance to operate for this team.
Think so too. Dirty Dancer in the chat is concerned about the defense. I think that's why he fell in the draft where he did. He did profile like really well as a good creator on his own with good size and as a shooter. A lot of good things there. And Shankov, I think, is more likely going to be the stash candidate on this team. But
Yeah.
Toby Lawal, man, like good athleticism
Yes.
coming on
Yes.
this team. I love his ability to run the floor, Jam. We got to watch him, show off his athleticism in person together. I know you've seen him quite a few times.
Mhm.
Is there a future for Lawal here potentially with Dallas?
Oh, I think there definitely is. As you mentioned, both big fans of him. Talk about someone, although slightly undersized, big, jumps out of the gym, looking down at the rim every time that he's catching lobs or just takes off and on the floor. Fantastic floor runner. I do believe in the touch. I think he's gonna be able to knock down enough open threes as well as two to keep people honest and attack closeouts. So I do think there is certainly a role for him with this team.
I love that. Jam, let's talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, they made a pretty sizable trade where they moved Giannis Antetokounmpo and Bobby Portis to the Miami Heat. In exchange, they got Tyler Hero, Khalil Ware, Jaime Jaquez, Kaspers Jankashonis, 3 first-round picks, a first-round pick swap, and a second-round pick as well. Part of the pick package did include pick 13 this year, which brought in Nate Ament, a guy who you and I have, respectfully disagreed over quite a bit this year. But Braden Burries was the first pick at pick 10. Nate Ament at pick 13. They also brought in a guy who I really liked scouting for the second round of Malik Lewis. They got him at pick number 60, which I think is tremendous value. Let's start with the Giannis trade. I don't think that we can bring that up without at least asking, is this fair value? Or is this understandable value? I think is the better question to ask, because like I don't
Yeah.
think you can ever get fair value for an MVP player, right? But is this expected value? Is this respectable value in your eyes for Giannis from the Milwaukee Bucks?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's certainly not going to be fair value for a player like Giannis. But I think this is certainly respectable value considering just the combination of picks and players that they got back. When you talk about Tyler Hero, a guy that can help in the short term and long term, hometown kid coming back to play with them, has the Milwaukee Brewers logo tatted on him. So I know he's excited to be back home and get a chance to help lead the franchise into what this next phase is going to look like for them. And then obviously Khalil Ware, just tremendous upside, still has to find his ways of figuring things out, find that consistency. But that is definitely the plight of all young players. But you get someone is like those guys, and of course Jaime Jaquez, who finds a way just to contribute and knows how to play.
Smart
And
player.
Cassius Jones, as you mentioned as well, too. There's a lot of upside still with him as a pass, dribble, shoot guard that can operate pick and roll. So I think you're getting a nice collection of talent on top of the picks that they made as well. And for Milwaukee, the rebuild is fully on. So there's going to be plenty of chances for guys to make their names, to move forward. And whether they eventually become trade chips or franchise cornerstones, I really liking the layout for it's going to be a tough rebuild. We'll see if like the guys like Hero and ones that are more ready can kind of speed it up. But there's a good amount to like about what they're heading.
I agree with you. But let's talk about the guys that they're bringing in to usher in this new era, this the post Giannis era. That's going to be so interesting to just kind of monitor from our position jam. And something tells me that the picks that they're going to get are going to be discussed heavily moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Braden Burries, the 10th pick overall. That's not a far deviation at all from where I had him on my board. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't anticipating him, if I'm just being completely honest here, Jam. I wasn't anticipating him being the direction that this team went. Now you can sell me on the versatility, like everything that I love about him. I know is going to be the reason why the Bucks got him, right? And it makes sense to me to that degree. But I feel like him playing now looks probably going to be behind Tyler Hero. So now you drafted the 10th player, which is not crazy to think of at all. Dylan Harper came off the bench for the Spurs, but you drafted this guy who now is going to be probably backing up Tyler Hero and playing behind him and Ryan Rollins, because Rollins is very well respected within this Bucks organization for everything that he's done. Coming in off the bench, makes winning plays, like great two-way player, good on the ball, good off the ball, great in transition. I think that he could be like future foundational piece for this team, could be like their Alex Caruso in the immediacy, like if things break right. Were you surprised by him being the first guy that the Bucks went after, knowing that they were going to be rebuilding?
Before I answer that, I just want to answer Sonny's questions real quick, just about the trade and kind of what they got back first round pick wise. So Milwaukee, they got the 13th pick back, which turned out to be Nate Amon. Then they're getting two additional first rounders. I think it's 2031 and 33. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
pick swap in 2030 and a second rounder somewhere in the 2030s. I think it's like 2032 or three. I think it's 33. But they end up getting what is it, three first round, four technically with the Nate Amon one. So
Yep.
all in all, but it's not a bad haul. But back to Burries and their selection there, it made a lot of sense. This is a guy that we talked about his physicality for a long time and how that bodes well to being able to play not just long-term success, but being able to play right away. And I think he's going to be able to do that. Just a strong frame on top of the ball skills. There's defensive tools is there with the strength, the length, the quick hands. He's a shot maker at all different levels. The one thing I was hoping for from him, and maybe we can see as he grows in the NBA, is the playmaking. Hopefully that can take a step forward. We'll kind of see. But I did like this fit there for him. And Dirty Dance Milwaukee is actually kind of fun considering the young players and there's not any real expectations there for him.
I guess I really want, like, I hear everything that you're saying. I just think with all the other teams that were kind of around this pick, I was like, oh, he would be fun here. Oh, he would be fun here.
Mhm.
And he could still very well be fun in Milwaukee. That was just, in my opinion, like the least exciting place for him to go, in my opinion. But hey, I'm hoping that I'm pleasantly surprised by that. But Jam, you're a guy with the 13th pick, Nate Ament. Now, this is just the way my brain works. So Jam, I'm sorry that you got to put up with me for this, but was compared unfairly to Kevin Durant coming into this season. And I know that he wasn't the first pick for the Milwaukee Bucks, but I think that we're going to see a lot of this, Jam. Like, this is me just getting out in front of the train. Like, the 6'10" dude who a lot of his handles and passing manipulation was being spoken about before the draft, his floor spacing ability and defense too. Like, 6'10" dude, young guy with high upside, replacing Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like, I'm almost kind of worried that that shadow is going to start getting casted over him as well, like being the big versatile piece that is playing right after Giannis. This is again after the whole Kevin Durant thing. Like, what do you think about him fitting on this team in particular? I like that he's not the only pick on the team that he's going to. I think he and Burries together could actually be quite fun. He has Khalil Ware who can provide floor spacing. He's got another forward next to him in Jaime Jaquez, who's a really outstanding playmaker for his position and is very strong as well. I think he's pretty well insulated on this team. I just still think that there are going to be some pretty high expectations for him, regardless of the fact that he was the second pick and picked at 13.
Yeah, I mean, there's always high expectations for anyone drafted in a lottery, and I think just in this situation here, the way that Milwaukee is set up, as we mentioned, just with Hero and Jaime Jaquez, Khalil, where there's guys there that they're expecting a little bit more of right now. And this is one of the reasons why I thought OKC could have been a good fix and kind of ease them in. Milwaukee provides the same thing, but he'll be playing a lot more, So I really do like this fit too. He still can develop and get to where they want him to go, still have the usage without things really being too forced. Still can go through mistakes and all that type of stuff, but there's a little bit more control on that development. And I'm glad you did bring up the Giannis stuff. I hope that's not a shadow that they're trying to really keep him in, but the way I do look at that, and I thought about it as soon as he was drafted to Milwaukee, is that they at least have experience. And although Giannis is an outlier with his motor and then
A
just kind of
freak, if you
like,
will.
yeah, for sure, a Greek freak, just kind of just his motor, the desire, and just the physical tools, all the stuff that he plays with. But they have gone and seen and experienced and used as a data point of having a big wing like that who is still growing into their body and has these different types of ball skills and physical tools. So they've seen a progression like that and have success doing that. So I think that's something that they can rely upon, but just still knowing that the development path is going to be the same as Giannis, but you've seen a decently similar style.
I love that too, man. And Dirty Dancer, I'm going to call this back up. He said Rollins and Burries are going to be fun on defense. I think
Yeah,
Rollins is going to be starting next to Hero, but how about Kasparis and Burries coming in off the bench as just like some
yeah.
greyhounds to sick on the other team too? Like, it could be fun. I'm with you. I think Milwaukee might be my G League Pass team that I'm going to be interested in following throughout the year. So great moves for them. Jim, and then also Malik Lewis, like, there's heart condition stuff that followed him. I think if
Mhm.
all things break right, he's a good 3-and-D wing or four-man that might be able to break into this rotation. But I think the health stuff is going to be the bigger thing that teams are going to want to look at, or that Milwaukee's going to want to look at in projecting him. Jam, pick 11. Yaxel Lindenberg went to Golden State, and he didn't take a lot of time off in his post game interviews, being interesting, saying that he was more of a
Mhm.
Kyrie guy, not a Steph guy. That the rest of his team doesn't really look like there's anybody stopping him from becoming a starter and stuff like that.
I love it.
Um, I love it too, but I am curious. I think like Draymond Green is this could go one of two ways. Either Draymond can be like, this dude is like doing too much, or he's like, this dude is cut from the same cloth as me. I'm excited to get to work with him. What do you? I mean, we could put the stories, like we could put the talking head stuff aside. I just want to at least mention it.
Hmm.
But they bring in Yaxel. They also bring in Leger Jones, who I think some of us were kind of weren't expecting him to necessarily get drafted, but he's an interesting athletic swing coming in out of Florida State, being picked 54th overall. What do you think of Yaxel being on this Golden State team? I don't think that anyone was necessarily surprised that this was the direction that they went, though.
Oh, not at all. This was for a long time. This before even the order was set, it was like, man, Yax would be a great fit there if they kind of end up in this spot and they aren't going to take, if they aren't fortunate enough to get one of those higher picks. But he's ready to come in and play right away. Just a very versatile big man, big wing, however you want to kind of categorize him. Brings the defensive playmaking, the playmaking on the offensive end with the ball skills, the passing ability there too. Can space the floor, attack, closeouts, strong. So he's ready to go from a physical and skill set match too. So with with Golden State, this is a perfect fit. He can come off the bench, contribute right away because there's no mistake. This is a team that wants to win and is trying to win. And I think if they are going to compete and make a deep playoff run, Yaxel is going to play a big part in that off the bench. And Steve Kerr is going to have to play this rookie, and we'll see
My
how
biggest
that goes.
question.
And he mentioned, I love that Yaxel just already talked about that, as you mentioned in his post-draft interviews. I talked to Coach Kerr. He was saying, like, I know he doesn't historically play rookies, but I want to change that, and I feel like I have an opportunity to do that, based on his skill set, he was saying, and also the way the roster was constructed. And I think he's absolutely right.
I'm concerned more so about the rest of the elements of this team. I think that Yaxel is certainly additive. I don't think that he makes this team worse or provides them a step back. I think that he's exactly the type of player that Golden State needs. And I know that there are a lot of, he's a grandpa because he's going to be, an old rookie or whatever, but he's still providing young legs to this team. And that's highly important because this is a very slow moving team. I think that Steph is going to do Steph things regardless of who's playing next to him, right? But I just think that Yaxel makes life easier for everybody. Like, he's going to be a good defender. He's going to be a good rebounder. He's grown into a very good floor spacer as well. I think that, he's obviously a sound decision maker. One of the things that Golden State prioritizes is you have to be smart. He had an assist to turnover ratio of, I think, like 3.1. It's up there with the best point guards within this class. So I think that he makes a lot of sense on this team. I don't know. Like, I want to be optimistic, but it's not necessarily a talent aspect thing for me. It's like, what is Coach Kerr gonna want to do? And I think the rest of their offseason is going to heavily influence my feelings about it. But I'm hopeful, right? Like, if you draft him at 11 when there were other names available on the board, like, that would signal to me that Golden State is looking to play him and make him a good, at least play like a good role.
Yeah.
All right. So
Definitely agree with that. Last thing about Golden State, do you see Leger Jones cracking the roster or any type of impact, or more of a G League guy?
I think he's more of a G League guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's you. I think you're betting on tools and you're looking to see if they can be kind of refined within your organization. I think it's a fun bet to take within the second round. I think that there were obviously other players who had a higher ability, in my opinion, to contribute immediately. But do they give you the same level of upside? And that's kind of the benefit, I think, of getting a Leger is like, hey, we could probably go and get whoever we were going to draft here anyway in free agency or whatever. But, like, let's just bring in this guy and see if he's got any sort of untapped potential that we can get into, because Florida State was a mess this year, in my opinion. So let's talk about a team who wasn't a mess until they played the San Antonio Spurs, that being the Oklahoma City Thunder, who at pick 12, they drafted Ade Mara. But that's not all they've done so far, Jam. I mean, they went back and through some trades. They got Bennett Sturts as well. They drafted Otega Oweh in the middle of, or about midway through the second round. They brought back Isaiah Hartenstein, which I think is very interesting to to mention for the Ademar selection. They moved off of Isaiah Joe to Detroit for a couple of second rounders. They moved Aaron Wiggins to Atlanta for a couple of second rounders. A lot of moves for the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're about a Lou Dort contract away from avoiding apron penalties. So curious to see if they do move off of Dort or if they move off of Kassan Wallace, who's been pretty interesting to follow in his like interviews and whatnot. A lot of different ways that this Oklahoma City Thunder team can improve on. I love the Ademar selection for them, but I'm interested to get your thoughts on what they've done so far.
Yeah, love the Mars selection as well too. How could you not with just a freak as far as the size, the length, and kind of the mobility that he has shown. Not someone that, although he's shown, and I know you are a fan of what he can do in space, but I think it's obviously more of a drop defender for them. So we'll see how that kind of plays into everything. But he is someone that can play obviously next to Chet that gives them another weapon against Victor Wembanyama and everything like that. Just adding to that collection of different bigs that they can throw out there with with
Oh,
Wembanyama
Victy.
and Bill Victy, with him as the primary guy they're really looking to go against, but then also just building that depth as a big man and what they can do. I think the passing makes a lot of sense on this team and what they want to do with their bigs to play DHOs and short rolls. Mark can do that. Hartenstein can do that as well. Obviously, Chet and then Sorber whenever he comes back. So you have all these bigs that can do that. They do have, I think, both a complementary skill set, but then a skill set that's also different enough to give them different looks. So I'm liking what they're doing.
I am too. And, a lot of big media. I'm not saying I'm the innovator of calling Ademara the Wimby stopper, but I certainly did mention the words Ademara and Wimby stopper within a couple of sentences of each other through our podcast, guest appearances, and stuff like that. I'm not foolish enough to think that Ademara is going to defend Victor Wembanyama in space. Like I know, okay? But I'm just of the mindset that in order to stop an oddity, it helps to have other oddities, rarities with on your team, right? So adding a guy who's 7'3", who also has a near 10-foot standing reach, who can pass the way that he does, who can rebound the way that he does, who can protect the rim the way that he does. I just think like at a bare minimum, adding him to the back line of your defense certainly helps. Like he and Chet could play next to each other. And if you're worried about the minutes load, like what other team could you imagine drafting at Amara and it being okay if you are on like this weird minutes watch with Ademara than Oklahoma City? I mean, that's why I think bringing back Isaiah Hartenstein is such a savvy move for this team, because now you've got Hartenstein, you still have Chet on his contract. You're bringing in this guy with a 10-foot standing reach. You still have J. Will on this team. Oh, and by the way, like Tom Sorber is still waiting in the wings. So all the things that you're concerned about with Ademara, like, are suddenly kind of like neutralized, and he can just come and be on a team that wants to win. He's a winning player, and he's additive to this team. And again, I know he's not going to defend Ademara, or excuse me, he's not going to defend Victor Wembanyama out in space. He's not going to be like out there, check ball, bring you up, let's go. But having someone on the back end who just makes Victor Wembanyama's life a little bit more difficult for a team that went 7 games with them without their two of their better players out on injury reserve. You can't tell me that adding Ademara isn't helpful. Oh, and by the way, like with all the perimeter stuff that's now opened up through trades and potential future trades, Bennett Cert's a guy who can just like play ball the way that he does, how smart and savvy he is. Like someone who can play next to Shea, who can play next to AJ Mitchell, who can play next to Jared McCain. Like these are just like, this is typical Oklahoma City Thunder behavior.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you talk about a dominant defense gets even better with someone right there in the back line. So they're going to be right there defensively. And I expect them to really put up another. Yeah, that's a lot of expectations, but for them to put up another historically great type of defense.
100%. All right, so we talked about the number 13th pick overall, Nate Ament, who was traded to Milwaukee. We'll move on from there to the Charlotte Hornets, who also had some pretty interesting trades as of late. Jam, we'll talk about those, but real quickly, Hannah Steinbach was drafted at pick 14. A few picks later, pick 18, they got Christian Andersen, the German national team, running together again here on the Charlotte Hornets. How can you not love that? But this team also, Jam, they moved off LaMelo Ball. I'm sure we'll talk about that. They also moved off Miles Bridges. And just to look at it holistically, this is what they've done, Jam. They traded Ball, Bridges. Josh Green was also a part of the LaMelo Ball trade to Minnesota. They moved out one future first and one future second. What they've brought in is Nas Reed, Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, 2 future firsts, 3 first swaps, and 3 seconds. What did you just make of this? It felt incredibly sudden to me, Jam. Like this really sudden identity shift that the Charlotte Hornets looked to make off the heels of what was probably their most beloved season in I don't know how long.
Yeah, that was very surprising, honestly. Like they were really starting to turn the corner and everything with LaMelo leading the way,
I said
and
the same thing, LaBall.
him leading the way, and then obviously Khan stepping up. You have Brandon Miller there, Kalkbrenner doing some really good things there. So it's a really fun collection of talent that seemed to be heading in the right direction. And I think if I'm in Charlotte, I'm trying to think about why they made this trade. I think it comes down to health, and then also him having not including this year, but 2 more years on the contract. So he was going to be due for an extension. And then you have to figure out, well, if you're going to give him that extension that he rightfully deserves, where does that leave you cap space wise? And is that enough for you to be able to contend? And I think that's something they really had to figure out. And I just think they didn't believe that LaMelo on a max contract, at least right now with this iteration of the team, was going to be enough. And that's just kind of what I'm thinking. They'll get ahead of that. But I would love to see them running back at least one more year with LaMelo and then try to make this move.
I I'm if you can move off of Miles Bridges, good job. Like I'm gonna start with that. Like if you can move off of Miles Bridges, good job. But the LaMelo Ball trade kind of bothers me. And there are a lot of people, Jam, who are saying that this is good work by the Charlotte Hornets. I don't know if I can get with that. You know, like for all the stuff that you could criticize LaMelo Ball for, he stepped up big time this year. Like he had an all NBA caliber season. And if you move him, like Devin Rose in the chat says, I wonder who their primary playmaker is going to be. Who's going to be their primary rim pressure guy? You know, like that's my biggest thing is that, look, I love Khan. He's not a big rim pressure guy. Could he be? You have to hope now. We don't know. Like he wasn't last year. Brandon Miller, not a big.
Change too much.
Say again?
I don't think that's going to change too much of Khan becoming this increased rim pressure guy.
I mean, you have to hope for it now. I mean, Brandon Miller, he's been a rim pressure question since college. I don't know that that's necessarily going to get better. They did draft Christian Andersen. He's not a big rim pressure guy. You know, you have to extend White now, right? Like you have to put Cody White on the deal and keep him. And listen, a lot of people are like trading Ball was the right move. Jode in the chat, who apparently has never been wrong before, has mentioned it a couple of times in the chat that trading Ball is the right move. Maybe. I'm not going to sit here and say I know for 100% certainty that it was the wrong move, but this feels kind of similar to what Sacramento did a few years back after the Light the Beam year, Jam. Like, you
Mhm.
remember that? That was like the
Yeah.
feel good story of the year with Mike Brown and all the players on that team. And sometimes I think people outthink themselves, man. Like the reason you have cap space is to sign good players. Like that's what the cap space is for. And if you're moving off of a guy who has all NBA upside and had made everybody's lives easier, and you just had the best season in your franchise's recent history, I don't know why this is like a brilliant move. Like, you could sell me like, okay, this is a savvy move, but I don't look at this as a great move, man. Like, you're playing with fire a lot here, and it made me rethink their selections because now Christian Anderson, you have to hope the 18th overall pick in this year's draft is able to come and play the point guard spot day one at 180 pounds.
I
Now you
think
kind
they're
of
gonna
have
rely upon Kobe White to do that and bring Christian off the bench. They re-signed Kobe White 3-year deal, so I think he's gonna be locked into that starting spot and also be relied upon to bring that rim pressure. But to your point, though, I don't think Christian's gonna need to be locked in to be the starter, but he is gonna be dependent upon to provide more minutes and more impact than we originally thought for sure.
that's my larger point. I'm
Mhm.
not sitting here suggesting that day one that he would be the starter, but now like you're looking down the line and hoping, right? And then Hannes, I like him a lot, but who's connecting the dots on this team? Like that's a rough look, man. And like you can look and say, look at all these first round picks we brought in. You didn't bring as many as what it looks like on paper because the majority of them are swaps. Like, and that's my biggest thing. Like, you essentially gained a first round in 3 seconds for LaMelo Ball. Like, you could argue the swaps thing. You were still gonna have picks in those drafts regardless. You just don't have any like, now you have a little bit of control of which ones you have, but you really only got one first rounder and 3 second rounders for LaMelo Ball coming in off of an all-star season, like an all NBA level season.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Nas Reed. I know there's still a lot of interest in him since being moved to the Hornets, but he's a guy that's a good passer, can help connect some things for the team as well too. So it's going to be a very interesting season in Charlotte to see who kind of emerges and what that roster ultimately looks like.
For sure. All right, Jam, pick 15. We already talked about Dalen Swain
Yep.
and him going to the Chicago Bulls. Pick 16 was Bennett Sturges, who went to the Oklahoma City Thunder. We talked about that. Jim, what we're going to do is we're going to hit our last break of the night. Then we'll be back to talk pick 17 to the Detroit Pistons. So hang tight and we'll be right back. All right, we are back here live on the No Ceilings NBA Draft Show, here on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel and podcast player of choice. Jam and I, we've been just breaking down the draft. We've been talking about trades. We've been talking about re-signings, just everything
Mhm.
that's been going on so far in the early part of the NBA offseason. And we're at pick 17, Jam, through a machination of trades here. Abuko Corey, my guy. All right, no one else can have him. He's mine. He's all mine. Just kidding. But he ended up going to the Detroit Pistons here.
Oh,
And
we're in
your guy,
16, right? 16, I'm sorry. Memphis and then Detroit.
I had mentioned that Sturts was drafted here at
Oh, I
16,
missed that.
and
That's me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
no, all good, yeah. So Bennett Sturts was drafted 16, moved to Oklahoma City. We talked about that a little bit already. Talking about Abuko Okori here to the Detroit Pistons. They also drafted your guy, Ugana
Mhm,
Onyenso.
mhm.
They traded for, as we mentioned earlier, for a couple of second round picks, Isaiah Joe, and they also moved Isaiah Stewart to Memphis for 3 first round picks, or correction, second round picks. So moved to, got 3 back, so they're +1 in second round picks. Abuko Okori, Ugana Onyenso, a team that we know needs, like Cade Cunningham needs help in terms of shooting, in terms of additional playmaking, and we know that this team loves defense, Jim. How do you feel like they've done so far in the early going?
They've done a great job, and I'm with Devin Rose saying that he loved how Detroit was aggressive and getting the guy that they want. and that ended up being a Corey. He's a guy that certainly put pressures on the rim. We just talked about Charlotte need a guy like that, and Corey definitely does that. Arguably the best rim pressure in the draft, especially from a guard perspective as well too. So he's someone that can come and do that alongside Cade, right? And then I think the team certainly does need more shooting, and Corey wasn't necessarily known for his shooting, but I think he's a much better shooter than what he initially really showed the whole year. I thought there was moments where he shows a really good shooter, but he's not gonna have to have that high usage and then 3, 4 defenders locked in on really the whole team. You know, you're having 10 eyeballs on you at all times on the court. Cade is going to be able to obviously take that off of him. They're going to be able to play with one of another. And I'm just hoping that my belief, and I know other evaluators too, and you believe in the shot too, that Okoro can give them enough floor spacing to kind of to get them what they want. I think I don't want to be too strong in this, but I think the effect that they're looking for, they're not one-on-one for this pairing, but I think they're looking for a Kyrie Luka type of combination where you have a big wing or big guard playmaker, and you pair that with a smaller guard who can just go get buckets, create in the paint touches, sprays, and those type of things. So I think that's what they're trying to build with those two guys.
I learned something by listening to our guy on the pin down, my guy Wes, who had me on his show. He recently had Tyler Metcalf on, and they were talking about Ibuka Okori being selected to the Detroit Pistons. Jam, I don't know if you knew this, but on Brewster Academy, he played with Trajan Langdon's son. So there was a bit of a
Yep.
connection
Yep.
that they had there. And it goes to show you, man, that like people hand wave and like gnash their teeth and just like put their nose up to relationships and how important they are in, obviously like free agencies, trades and stuff like that, but even in the draft. And I think, it's no small coincidence that he played with Langdon's son, and here we are now with the Detroit Pistons bringing him in on the team. And I think for all the right reasons that you laid out. And I think that with the downhill pressure that he brings to this team, I love so much. I'm higher on the playmaking. I'm higher on the shooting, I think, than what some others are. Obviously, like with the ranking that I had on him coming into the season, I just think getting another pressure point, and he does fit the mold for like the sort of point guard that the Pistons will typically like to swing on. They've
Mhm.
brought in Reggie Jackson before. They've had Dennis Schroeder, Dennis Jenkins, guards like that. I think that Ibuka fits that mold, and I think he's got really high upside, man. Like one of the best athletes within this class. I think he's a better playmaker, like I said, than what he got
Yeah.
credit for because he played on a poor Stanford team. But Ugana Onyenso, with the
Yes.
loss now of Beef Stew, I'm gonna let you cook here. Getting him in the second round, pretty later than what I think a lot of us at No Ceilings would have liked to have seen.
Mhm.
But goes to a good team, a defensive minded organization. I think that he could thrive in that system once he gets once he's acclimated to the system. How do you feel about Ugana being a Detroit Piston now, Jam?
Seem like we have some good fans, a good amount of fans here in the chat for
Well, I got
one.
one non-fan, but yeah.
Yeah. I'll
Shout
ignore
out
that
to
one.
Grunier or however you pronounce your name, sir. I hope you're having a good day.
No, I definitely respect that. I think Onyenso comes in to Detroit and he's instantly their best shot blocker. I think this is a
Yeah.
guy that's going to play behind Duran, who I'm assuming is going to come back. I think obviously you always have a choice, but I feel like they're going to have to go ahead and pay Duran what he wants right now. Um, but he's a better shot blocker than Duran. I maybe depends what you want to say about Asar Thompson. Maybe he's the best shot blocker on that team, but at least from a guard, excuse me, from a big man perspective, he definitely is. Just the timing, the hand-eye coordination, it's just absolutely incredible. And this is all with him not being this pogo stick athlete and everything like that. as a shot blocker and a play finisher. But the role is very clear for him. It's going to be set screens for Cade and Corey, finish at the rim, and block shots. So I'm loving what they brought in to be able to give them an element that they did not have. And they get, I think, whatever you want to say about Mara, but I think he's right up there to being one of the best shot blockers in the class. And then just real quick, the trade for Isaiah Joe brings them the additional shooting that they're looking to bring as well. They're going to have to add some more shooting to the team as well. You can never have enough shooting, especially for like Cade and Corey and everything like that. Maybe Tobias is back too. But yeah, I think Detroit, if you're a fan of the Pistons, they're heading in the right direction to build off the momentum they had last year.
Yeah, and bringing in Isaiah Joe on, for just a couple of second rounders, I think is good business on their part. So good job here by Detroit. I did get asked by Sonny K, Detroit is Steven's teams, right? It's complicated. I am a Thunder fan, being from Arkansas, but I did grow up before the Thunder, obviously, like occupied Oklahoma City. I did grow up rooting for the Pistons and the Phoenix Suns because Detroit had my guy Corliss Williamson, who is from Russellville, Arkansas, which is the town in Arkansas that I was born in. And I liked Phoenix because they had my guy ISO Joe on that team as well. So I try to root for my pro hogs for whatever team that they're on. So hopefully that answers that question. That probably didn't need to be addressed, but here we are. We're doing it. All right, Jam. Pick 18 was the Christian Anderson to the Hornets. We already covered that. But the next pick 19, Allen Graves to the Toronto Raptors, who also drafted in the middle of the second round, Jaden Bradley. Interesting group here. Obviously, there is still work potentially to be done by the Toronto Raptors, especially if they bring in Kawhi Leonard. Allen Graves is the player who I tagged as a middle class man's Cam Boozer. The Toronto Raptors apparently valued that type of a player to go along with Scotty Barnes and CMB and Valanciunas as well. I think that his floor spacing, rebounding, and passing is going to be interesting within that system. I think that he fits the Raptor system to an absolute T. And then Jaden Bradley, winner, player of the year for his conference in college. What did you make of the draft for the Raptors, man? It was just kind of like business as usual.
I was just a little bit surprised at the Graves pick, but it makes sense considering that there's more word around the industry that Toronto's more of a analytical team than they, previously were under Masai, with Webster leading the way. And of course, Allen Graves, one of the analytical darlings, and for good reason. And there's this ability to be a pass, dribble, shoot type of big. I think he's more a guy at the 4. I think he could really provide just a needed element to that team. I do worry just a little bit about the fit. Obviously, he's probably going to come off the bench, but thinking long term, if you do close and what that looks like C and B, is he going to be your closing 5 or the 4, or what does that really all look like? And it may not really. It probably will work itself out, especially if they trade for Kawhi, and that's going to be some guys going. But all in all, I do like the fit there, despite me being surprised by it.
Yeah, and we talked about this on the last show, Jam, is like at a certain point, at his size, with the shooting ability that he has, his ability to attack the glass, the positional playmaking that he brings as well. Even if the defense is nowhere near what the analytical kind of case that was built for him is, even if he's just like average or even slightly below average, I think that he's still an NBA player. And it's not the sexiest pitch in the world to tell a fan base like, hey, you drafted like a veteran NBA player, at pick 19. You always want to praise upside no matter what. But I think they did a good job of getting like a safe floor prospect who knows, Jam, like everything could break right for him within the system. And again, I love the Toronto system for him. It's like that amoeba offense. I think that he fits that so well. It's kind of similar to what the Hawks look to do. Is like the team is the point guard, so to speak. A lot of Eastern Conference teams are doing that, which is fun. But I think that he just alleviates positional playmaking, brings in physicality, stuff like that. Jaden Bradley, I think, is a good pick, in the second round, just as someone who, if you, again, you want to get someone who's a safe floor prospect, relative to where they're drafted. I don't know if there's another guard who was available that could give you that same level of safety within that pick.
Yeah, and I like potentially what they could do together as far as a combination, Jamal Shed and Jaden Bradley as well. Guys that are competitive, they defend, they understand how to play the position. So I think that could be a solid combination for them. They may need I think I'll be strong about this one. I do think they
Let's go.
need a more high upside type of point guard there for them long term. But as far as guys that can fill the role and be productive there, that's a good combination.
Alrighty, so let's talk about the San Antonio Spurs, Jam, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna need you to keep me honest with time on this one because I could probably do this one for a really, really
Yeah.
long time. The Spurs were the team that we as a collective, like we had no idea like which player would be best for them. Jaden Quaintance was the one player who we were like, we have no idea what's the best team for them. I advocated for this pick as well as a few others at No Ceilings that like JQ to San Antonio just made so much sense. And for all the kind of double talk that we got on JQ is like, well, the talent is there, but the injury
Mhm.
is scary, like he could fall like out of the first round. Um, and
Yeah.
I understand why. Like if I'm investing millions of dollars in a player, I probably want to see them play basketball, right? But the thing is like people talked about JQ like we're never going to see him play basketball again. And it's like we understand that at some point this guy's going to come back. And if he's even 80% of the athlete that we saw in college, like you still have like a really good NBA level athlete at that position. And what did we see happen to the Spurs in the playoff, Jam? Like that they bled points when Wemby was taken off the bench. They got punched in the mouth at the center position. And so you take Jaden Quaintance at 20, who has like the biggest upside within this class. And then there's like the questions like, okay, but like, does he miss time? What does that do to his development? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, by the way, let's trade back into the first round and get Terrence Reed Jr., who, Jam, I don't know, might be the third best big man if things break right. So they fortify the biggest weakness that they have on this team,
Mhm.
and they're still young and ascending. And then in the second round, they get Jacoby Gillespie, who is a point guard that I know that you and I both liked as a second round prospect.
Yep.
And then they get Malik Brown, who is an NBA level defender at minimum. I think that this is the best draft of anybody. This is very much like a take your medicine,
Mm.
eat your vegetables. How do you answer back to getting punched in the mouth? I think that this was the best answer to a season of any NBA team with the Spurs.
And the reason I'm laughing before I get to that, I'm sorry if I mispronounced the username, but I think it's Music Friend, but it's the pod is longer than Mortal Kombat 2. Yeah, it is. We're getting to the end. We appreciate everybody sticking with us. If you had to break it down and kind of take a break and things
Come
like that,
back.
appreciate that. Yeah, we're still here.
Mortal
But
Kombat
yeah,
2 was fantastic, by the way. Do we want to take a couple minutes to talk about Mortal Kombat 2, Jam?
that is on my to the watch list for sure. So I'm
It's
looking
good.
forward to eventually getting that. We take a small break during the off season, but I digress a little bit. But yeah, acquaintance. This is what we talked about a couple weeks ago. As a guy that I was afraid I was too low on. I have him at 20, but it was just simply because I'm trying to balance that. Yeah, we could go on like for sure. I'm trying to balance that injury risk with someone who has all NBA caliber defensive upside, right? So that was just kind of the whole trick and kind of tug with Quaintance, but he gets to a spot in San Antonio who could be patient. And if I'm not mistaken, please correct me. If you know for sure, if anyone in the chat, I believe it's come out that Quaintance will need surgery, and won't play this next season, or it's shaping up not to play this upcoming season. But you can imagine when healthy, if everything works out, just how fearsome that defense can be at the 4 and 5 with Wimby. And then just as a whole, Vassell, and we saw Harper take a step there We'll see if Fox
Castle,
is there long
Carter.
term. Castle, obviously, yeah. So there's so many defensive weapons they can throw out, especially if Quayton's kind of returns to the form that we think that he can be. And then as just as the backup, as you mentioned, Terrence Reed is right there, just a physical force, who's also nimble on both ends of the floor, can switch a little bit too, play at the level, get back. There's some drop stuff to him as well too. So I think fantastic rebounder. I think that he's a guy that can work next to Wemby as well too. And finally, the last guy, as far as the bigs, as they drafted Michael Brown, ACC, excuse me, the Malik Brown. Still got Michael on my Malik Brown, but a defensive
Could you
playmaker,
imagine?
an ace. As far as defensive playmaking, ACC Defensive Player of the Year. So they're really fortifying that defense and giving some different big man looks alongside Wemby, which I love. And Gillaspie could be a long-term fit for them. It seems almost inevitable that Fox is going to get moved at some point, and obviously it's not going to be a one-to-one replacement for Fox to bring a different skill set, but he is a guy that can play along next to Castle, can play along Harper because of his ability to shoot and also run pick and roll. So this is a fantastic draft for the Spurs.
Absolutely. I mean, Jacoby being on that team, like if you're worried about defensive liabilities, hello, like this is the team that you would put Gillespie on to thrive. Like this is Coach Barnes' wet dream, right? We'll keep it moving, and I know we're only on pick 21 right now with Memphis, but guys, we've covered a lot of these when we talk
Yeah.
about the teams as a whole. We don't have as much as what it feels like right now.
Mhm.
But the Memphis Grizzlies drafted Kareem Lopez at 21. We already discussed that. Philadelphia, the fall stopped here, Jam. LeBaron Philon.
A lot of people waiting for this one. If you made it through.
And the reason we're still going is because you guys keep watching and you're bringing your
Yeah.
friends. Like our viewership has grown. I mean, come on now. LeBaron Philon fell for obvious reasons, Jam. Like this was intel that we were getting. We were seeing on other intel mocks and stuff like that.
Mhm.
The sub 180 thing is real. Like regardless of how people feel about it and things like that, and there are people that have overcome it, but every
Yeah.
one of those players that have overcome it, none of them are on the team that draft them, so maybe teams are worried about that. But the 76ers at pick 22 felt it was an appropriate time for them to draft LeBaron Philon.
Yeah.
Now this team obviously has Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe, but I mean, if you need a third guard in a rotation for Philadelphia, I think that this could be such a fun pick and such a fun fit for them because I think he fits next to either one of those guards.
He definitely does. If we kind of really get into that, why do you think he fell so far? Is it just the weight? Is it just not a belief
I
from
think that's the
NBA
biggest
teams
thing.
and the shooting jump that he made? Is just the weight?
I think it is. I mean, he shot well for a year and a half in college. Like the first half a year at Alabama wasn't great from deep, but he was there. You know, he answered the at the rim questions. He was a great defender in his freshman year, took on a higher usage and was still a respectable defender in the SEC, which, you know, some people would say is the toughest conference in college basketball. Good passer, good foul, like does all the things that you want, but I think there is something to it, Jam. And not only did he weigh in under 180 pounds, but he only gained 2 pounds from the first combine weigh-in that he had. So he didn't really show a big leap. Maybe teams are viewing that as they didn't take it serious. Maybe they viewed it as, can his body reasonably put on much more weight? You know, I think that really had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and it's loving the chat as always. And Dirty Dancing was multiple point guards who, weighed under just right around that 180, where strength was certainly concerned with them. And I'm totally agree with that. Even guards too, Cam Carb. I know the physical tools are a little bit different. Devin Rose, of course. Teams had a personal preference with another prospect. Nothing really against him. I think that plays into it as well. I have Philon at 11, so this is an evaluation
Had him
in
at
career.
15.
Yeah, it's evaluation in career that I'm watching very closely to see. All right, was I too high? Was I too low? What did I get right? What did I miss? Because even with the concerns about the strength and the weight, I thought that he had good moments finishing through contact at the rim. And then, like, he brings such a dynamic skill set on top of the improved shooting. Like, has shot making versatility too. He gets downhill. He's tricky with the ball in his hands, the pace, he has so much the ability to create paint touches on his own. So I was very surprised to see him fall. And with Philadelphia here, they get another guard that can really create for himself and others, do that off the bench too. It's going to be tricky to kind of see him, Maxi, and VJ on the floor together. I don't anticipate seeing that too much at all. But I do like his ability to be able to control the game and contribute off the bench. And I think he's going to be an impact guard for them. And they do two different things. But him and McCain, you get another dynamic guard that you kind of have to figure out how they fit in there next to the talent they have on the perimeter.
And I'm seeing people in the comments like I'm just bringing you the news, like I'm not saying that I had him 15. Like he actually rose up my board. I'm just telling you, go look at it yourself. Like I know what the film looks like. I watched them too, guys. Like I've watched the guy play. Like I get it, but there is something to the 100. Like, is it silly that someone who weighs 180 pounds, like it could magically be better? Like Shea weighed in at 180 at his combine. Like,
it's a great point.
There's something to it. Like there is, like, sometimes you were talking about the best athletes in the world. Sometimes it does come down to a couple inches and a couple pounds.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like there's the margins for error could come down to something like that. And I'll put it to you like this, if you think it's silly. Let's just say that you're going to assume that he gains 10 pounds. He only gained 2 pounds from last year to this year, so it's going to take his rookie contract, just based on that trajectory, for him to gain, most of that. He would still weigh less than what Keaton Walker weighs right now if he gained 10 pounds. And that NBA teams look at stuff like that, and I think that it is important. As silly as it might sound, there's something to it. All right, Jam.
One more question on Fine, real
let's
quick.
go.
Do you think that strength stuff is more concerning for him on the offensive end or on the defensive end, or are they equal to you?
I think at certain levels it could be the offensive end. I think most of it is going to be defensively, but like look at the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Phylon can survive getting face guarded by NBA level athletes to the degree that we just saw in the finals? Like it was like watching a cornerback and a receiver 3 yard, like inside 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. It was heavily physical on both sides. So if you were an offensive and a defensive guy, do we honestly think that LeBaron can hold up like that? Like that's where I think the questions lie. It's not the heart, it's not the want to, it's not the fear of. At some point, though, like, is he going to be able to do it? And that's what I think NBA teams are kind of afraid of.
Yeah, I'm more worried about on the defensive end. I just think the offensive end, just to handle the self-creation, ability to create space, and just running pick and roll to kind of negate some of the physicality challenges. But defensively, that's really where it's going to be, despite kind of the grittiness that he has, the quick hands and anticipation stuff.
Absolutely. All right, so at pick 23, Jam, the Atlanta Hawks drafted Zuby Ejiofor. We talked about that.
Yep.
We're right back to talking about pick 24.
Yeah.
This is your team, one of your guys. I'm sure you were happy to see the marriage here. Cam Carr, elated. Cam Carr going to the Los Angeles Lakers. I think that he fits his team's like ambitions moving forward with the ball handlers that they have. With the floor spacing that he has, the athleticism that he has, to get stronger, continue to be a good defensive playmaker. I just think that he fits what the Lakers are going to want to do this year.
My God, I cannot wait for Summer League and for him to get out there and do his thing and hopefully parlay that to a strong rookie year, being fed by Luka, Austin, and fingers crossed LeBron. But as you mentioned, like, this is an excellent fit. He's a 3-and-D guy. that seamlessly fits with the Lakers, run the floor and dunk and finish at the rim, attack closeouts and dunk and everything like that.
Did we mention dunking?
Yes, transition dunk, backdoor cuts, lob cut. Like he's going to be a. This is what I love about Cam Carr and like his type. He's that play finisher that does it at the rim and as a shooter. He's like that multiple dimension play finisher. The shooting is on movement. He can hit open shots, contested shots as well to attack closeouts. As I mentioned, we'll see if the ball handling take a step forward because that'll unlock more things for him. But that's more of like a year 2, year 3 thing because the role is clear. And I love what he said at his draft press conference, talking about he felt like he's the best defender there. That's his role, and he knows what he's supposed to do: finish at the rim, defend, and space the floor. He can transition to doing just that right away, and I'm just super excited about everything that he brings there. And I hope that he plays right away. The skill set is there, and it's really going to be showtime with the Lakers once he get going with that squad.
I love that. Jay Jarrow says, interesting that the two bean poles of the draft slid on draft night, that being foul on Carr. Hey, I'll tell you, Carr weighed in over that 180-pound mark, right? So again, I know it might seem like a mythical threshold that you got to clear. Look it up if you don't want to listen to me, but
he is a plus athlete though, with over 7-foot wingspan. So I think for me, those are compensating factors despite not having that ideal weight that you want.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that long wingspan that has resulted into a smooth jumper. I mean, we saw guys like Devin Vassell, who I think that he compares pretty favorably to if you're on the high upside with him. Same thing for Mikal Bridges. He's not as tall as those guys, but he is long, right? Well, we did talk about this, that he is as tall as Mikal. So he does kind of fit some of the dimensions of those guys as well. I do like the pairing of him being on this team. I think if, all things break right, you got a good defender to kind of help out along that perimeter as well. That's the biggest thing to me with the Lakers is like, how are they going to compensate for the defense? Is LeBron going to be on this team? I think that's going to be an interesting thing to monitor. Is he going to go to Golden State? Is he going to go back to Miami or Cleveland to finish up his career? So we got to mention that. But Luka, obviously the vision is for him to be the guy on this team. They did just re-sign AR-15 on this team. Hillbilly Kobe, Austin Reeves himself, the pride of Arkansas. Austin Reeves, he is on this team now. You do need to insulate those guys, though, with good defenders, but you also need to space the floor, right? For whoever they're running pick and rolls with, you need that offensive spacing to be optimized. And again, that's something that Cam Carr does in spades. Any closing thoughts on the Lakers, Jam, as we still got a few picks left to get to here?
Yeah, just real quick. The defensive playmaking is the big thing for Cam Carr. His ability to block jumpers, I think, and is very impressive with his fighting through pick and rolls and blocking or closeout blocks, in addition to the chase down stuff that he does as well too. So he is going to have some trouble dealing with kind of the strong physical drivers, of course, as we talked about the frame and the weight, but the defensive playmaking that he brings with the length, anticipation, the movement skills, quick hands, I think that's going to pay dividends as he adds that strength.
I agree with you, brother. All right, so at 25, Sergio De La Rey was drafted by the Mavericks. We touched on that. The Denver Nuggets drafted Terrace Reed, moved him over to San Antonio. They did also add Trevon Brazile and Bryce Hopkins within the second round. Jam, you and I talked about on the second day stream that we kind of like these, and it looks like the Nuggets have a vision of adding some youth with athleticism and toughness and versatility to them. But then Boston, they draft Chris Nack Jr. So one of a few players where we were curious to see where they were going to go. Once JQ was off the board, I think a lot of us were like, okay, the next project guy that a lot of us are kind of monitoring to see where he goes and how he fits. Chris Nack Jr. gets drafted to the Boston Celtics. Now, they also got Dylan Mitchell, who I think is a really great move for them too. He kind of fits like that Gosh, who all? Hugo Gonzalez,
Jordan
Jordan
Walsh. Yep.
Jordan
Yep.
Walsh, right? Like those kind of versatile defensive impact players. Just to get another one of those guys in the mix. But Chris Jr. is going to be a project big man. I think that the skill set that he provides is very Boston coded. What did you think of the selection?
Yeah. A little bit surprised, but honestly, when I thought about it, not really. As you mentioned, is Boston coded as far as him being a big man that has potentially really the pass, dribble, shoot skill set. I still really believe in the jumper is smooth. He can do things off of movement. And I think the biggest thing for me about this pick is that he showed that he's willing to do more of the big man things. That was always a knock on his game. And he showed that ability to grow and do that under Coach Sampson at Houston. Is a more solid screen setter. He's on the glass on both ends, can create second chance opportunities, will run the floor. And then we'll see what happens defensively. The tools have always been there. Can he take another step up there as well, too? And I think Boston is one of the best environments to get that out of him.
Yeah, I think the things that he does well, like as a, or that he projects to continue to do well, like even though he didn't shoot as high as what some of us were anticipating, still a good percentage for a young big man playing in the environment that he did, right? Playing for a team with a lot of high stakes in Houston. So
Mhm.
putting him in Boston where he's going to get that optimal floor spacing, he's going to be told if he's open to shoot it whenever he does play. So I think that's
Mhm.
going to do great things for the confidence. A lot of people underrate the intangible aspects of playing basketball, Jam. Like they just think it's 2K and you put guys out there and you get the shot meter going, right? But you need the confidence in the
Yeah.
jumper. And I think that, Boston is going to be one of those teams. Joe Maz is going to be like, hey, if you're open, you shoot it. If not, I'm going to come over here and chew your butt.
Yeah.
But the rebounding is there. He did show some good defensive tools. I'm think back to the BYU game where he was asked to be the guy who went out there and defended AJ DeBonsa on the perimeter.
Mhm.
So I think the footwork and the fluidity and the mobility is there. Just want to see the toughness, want to see the rim protection because Boston, of all teams, like in how they value analytics and how they let that play into both sides of the floor, they're going to want their big man to be versatile defensively, and they're going to want to see him be able to deter shots away from the rim. That's something that he's got to work at, and I think that that's the secret sauce for him, James. It's not anything offensively. If he can be a good rim protector, I think that's going to open up the playing time for him in Boston.
Yeah, definitely. Just showing that he can switch in space, play with that scheme, and continue to give effort. Is there anything you wanted to add to Boston? I just wanted to forgot to ask you something real quick about
Please.
Denver. I just wanted to ask you about Denver with Brazil. Do you think he's someone that's going to play right away, or how are you feeling about that fit there?
Yeah, I know our guy Devin Rose, who he said, "Hey, my Nuggets, dang, that was fast." Yeah, not a first round guy. We did loosely touch on the second round pick, so we'll rewind here. Me being an Arkansas guy, it's hard. Like I, it took me a while, Jam. You were actually one of the people who got me to stop being so hard on him and being like, "Hey, look, like he actually has like NBA level skills." And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
dang, you're right." I think in Denver he makes a lot of sense as maybe Peyton Watson insurance. Like that's asking a lot for a guy who was drafted in
Mhm.
the 30s, right? But even if you keep Peyton, him being the backup, I think makes a lot of sense because you do have, athleticism, you do have, good weak side rim protection, you have a good floor runner, a guy who's going to be a lob threat too. I think he keeps the floor spaced open for what Denver likes to do. I think he could be a rotational player pretty early.
Yeah.
Like him making a case of a starter is going to take a lot, in my opinion. But Denver got too cute, man, with the picks that they got. They valued intelligence only as opposed to like a meld of intelligence and
Mhm.
athleticism. And I think that that's why we've seen Denver trend in the way that they have. So, like we talked about on night two, that
Yeah.
I'm not shocked to see them go for versatility with athleticism and strength with a guy like Bryce Hopkins and a guy like Trevon Brazile.
Yeah, I'm with you. I really like this pick for them. And I love the comment about the Nuggets needing archetype like Brazil, 6'10". He can work the dunker spot, be that lob threat there, especially when Aaron Gordon is out of the game. Or even if you want to have Aaron Gordon kind of initiate offense, which he can do. Hopefully, still on the squad. I know there's been rumors about him, but Verzel, play finisher, can work stuff with Jokic. Obviously, he'll find him from anywhere and space the floor, and he gives you a shot blocker on the weak side and a guy that can defend in space. So I was high on him, still am high on him, and I think the Nuggets will be very excited about what he can bring.
I'm glad that you gave me an excuse to talk about another Arkansas, and
Of
I want the
course,
record
of
to show
course.
that it was not me that initiated the conversation. It was Jam. Okay. Back to Boston. Anything that you want to add on the Dylan Mitchell front and his fit within this team?
Just as you mentioned, it fits that mold of guys that they're really stacking up. These physical, athletic, just defensive dynamos who will really just get after you at the point of attack on the ball, active and disruptive and passing lanes as well too. And Dylan Mitchell, of course, the shot just has to find some type of
Yeah.
progression. But then I think about, does it actually? Maybe this he just finds a way. There's enough shooting on Boston offensively, because he's so active as a cutter too. So if he can do that and kind of really just attack the space and make plays, if he was like a non-dribbler, like the handle was functional, maybe it's not like this super creative handle, but he has the handle to be able to dribble, attack space, and make a play. So I think that's a valuable compensator if he isn't going to shoot.
Absolutely. All right, we talked about the Brooklyn Nets getting Joshua
Mhm.
Jefferson at pick 28 already. We talked about the Sacramento Kings trading up to go get their guy in Alex Caravan. Let's close out the first round discussion, Jam, with the
Yep.
Phoenix Suns, who couldn't help themselves. They traded into the first round to go and get Koa Pete. But then just days later, they move in to get Miles Bridges, which is kind of interesting to me. Like, speaking of couldn't help themselves, they go and get another former Michigan State guy
Mhm.
on the team that is ran by Michigan State alum. So
Yep.
I was fine with the pick at pick 30. I guess I kind of still ultimately am, because like this is a guy who pedigree wise was the only guy who came into the cycle who could rival that of a Cam Boozer in terms of accolades and recognition and accomplishments and stuff like that. Koa Pete was the only guy who closest, athletic bloodlines as well, albeit to the NFL, but still pro league bloodlines, things like that. Phoenix trading up to get him at pick 30. I got it.
Mhm.
But again, you bring in Miles Bridges. Now I'm a little bit uncertain as to, like, do you view Pete as a three? Do you
Yeah.
view Bridges as a three? Did you trade up to go and get this guy to all of a sudden now make another trade and bring him into backup Miles Bridges, who's going to come with a lot of, let's just call it what it is, man. There's going to be some media stuff surrounding that move as well. I kind of walked away being even more confused about the Pete acquisition.
Yeah. There's a reason why he came out. He felt like he was going to be a first rounder, and he eventually did get there at the end of the first here with Phoenix and getting a chance to stay in Arizona there. Pete's another one of the guys that I feel like there's a real chance I could be too low on. I believe I have him like mid or like late 30s. And it's just concerns about the shooting and not just him not being productive as a shooter. It's the volume wasn't there. And then the form change. I know you can switch things back and it can look completely different, more comfortable, but that is certainly scary. And it just adds like he's really, really searching for it. So we'll see what happens there. I think maybe in kind of the Dylan Mitchell mold, I'm wondering if he still has enough of the other qualities, especially consider his physicality and just the NBA ready body, the winning mindset, the winning plays that he makes as well too. If that's enough to compensate for him not being the shooter that he needs to be. Like I said, he can attack the space as well too, similar to Wilson, now a non-dribbler. So we'll see how all that goes. And I'm just hoping that he can take a step forward as a shooter. It's just very concerning.
It just these moves together really confounds me, because
Mhm.
you still have a developmental guy that you're bringing along in Kamal Malawatch, right? So you got a lot of
Yeah.
developmental equity tied into him. Rasheer Fleming's was actually kind of nice, but now I'm not sure what his like. Are
They
they
kind of
gonna?
overlap, don't they?
They overlap, right? So you got Rasheer Fleming's with Bridges with Pete. Fleming's was nice. I think if you move him though, like look at what Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins are going for. They're going for 2 second rounders. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you get for Rasheer Fleming's? You know, like,
Yeah.
do they view Bridges as like a wave and stretch guy just so
Mm-hmm.
they keep salary on their team, make him a free agent, and then if somebody wants to sign him, they can on a minimum because he's still getting paid from Phoenix. Like, there's still a couple ways that this could go. I just think Phoenix did a lot to do nothing. You know, like ultimately at the end of the day, they did so much to do nothing.
Yeah, it's a team that's an interesting situation. Like, are they trying to compete? I guess when you have Devin Booker and everything like that, and Jalen Green, you
Jalen
don't even
Green.
want to compete, but you are in the West. So, um, as they say when you're building teams, you don't want to be in the middle. You want to be at the top or at the bottom, so you can kind of potentially get these high level draft picks. So we'll see how that team looks, especially early.
Yeah, and just to quick hit some notable second rounders that have not been discussed yet so far, Jam. Bruce Thornton was drafted and went to the Houston Rockets. We mentioned Isaiah Evans as a part of that, kind of pick swap essentially from Minnesota or from the Nets going to Minnesota. Malik Thomas, Wu Pig Sui is going to Cleveland. I actually kind of like that fit. Ryan Conwell going to the Miami Heat on a cost controlled contract. Excuse me.
Love it.
Um,
Such a Heat player.
Such a Heat player, and I mean, my goodness, like 3-point shooter and defender on a Giannis Antetokounmpo team. Like, if you want to start winning on the margins, Ryan Conwell, like that's a very savvy move. I love that. Oh, and the guy who was getting what's our guy's name for the Pacers, the backup point guard, went to Arizona. Um,
Jaden Bratt. He's on the
no,
Pacers
no, no.
right now.
The white guy, yeah. McConnell, TJ
Oh, Carl.
McConnell.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
The guy who was getting TJ McConnell comps and Braden Smith is now going to the Indiana Pacers, so it's just kind of par for the course. I actually like that fit a lot for
Yeah,
the Purdue guy there.
great guy for him to learn from.
Great guy for him to learn to. All right, Jam, that's gonna wrap it up, man. I mean, we
We
almost
made
went as
it.
long as the actual day one and day two drafts themselves, but we had a lot that we wanted to get off our chest, man. And like to the chat's point, there are a lot of names getting mentioned up here and other interesting points in terms of draft and stash guys, Jack KL and other guys that we're just not going to do that. All right. But we could if we wanted to. But before we get out of here, dude, I just want to plug the draft guide. If you haven't got the draft guide, it still serves a very good purpose. Like if you want to go get it, it's over at noceilingsnba.com. You can go and get that. If you're going to summer league, you still want to get the draft guide to learn about the guys that your team brought in, right? If you're watching summer league, if you're paying attention to like some of these undrafted free agents and stuff like that, the guide has 100 players in it. A lot of words on each one of them, stats, shot charts, comparisons, high lows, all those things. Like the draft guide is still a valuable resource that you can still go and get over at noceilingsnba.com. Our mock draft simulator that Albert Garbage Time Gim made himself already has the
Incredible
2020
stuff.
incredible stuff. Already has the 2027 draft class in it. So if you're like us being draft sickos, Jam, you and I, we've already started watching 2027 prospects just to get ready for next year. You guys can go and look at some names yourselves. But
Mm-hmm.
Monday, Maxwell is having his undrafted free agency roll call. So if you're curious to see who are some of the guys that weren't drafted who still have a lot to offer NBA teams, and a lot of them have already been signed to two ways and E10s and stuff like that, Monday he's going to have you there. Nathan on Tuesday is working on a piece. I don't know if you've been paying attention to what's going on with like Bobby Marks and Jaylen Brown and stats versus film, and I don't know what we're yelling about. Nathan's going to have a very topical piece that goes over all of that. Jam, I'm working on a piece where I'm kind of like making a reboard based off of where players went, because I think that circumstances and situations play a part in success. And now that I know where players have gone, I'm going to be writing a little bit about that What do you have going on, brother?
Yeah, so right now I've been doing some scouting of a live period here in my area in the DMV. So I'm going to be working on putting together a piece reviewing the two live periods. Probably won't have it this week, but next week, right before we head out for summer league.
All right. And speaking of summer league, a lot of us no ceiling people are going to be
Yeah,
there. I'm going to be
yeah.
there from God, what, the 10th through the 15th, the 11th through the 15th, something like that. I should probably look that up before I miss a flight, but I'm going to be going around that time frame. It's going to be my first year being there.
Let's
Um,
go.
Jam, I know you're going to be there. I just want to put out now as I hit my microphone. Um, if you're in summer league and you don't come and say hi to us, and I find out that you're at summer league and don't say hi to us, I'm gonna write a letter to wherever you work, right? Like white chick style. I'm gonna write a letter, and I'm gonna be very mad that you don't come up and say hi to us. I'll be easily identifiable. I'll be wearing my normal Steven attire just so you can come and find me. But Jam, I know I speak for you too. We want the
Yeah.
sickos to come say hi, man.
Exactly. We're all very approachable and no ceilings. Love talking hoops, meeting new people, continue to grow the community. We've been fortunate to meet so many amazing people through the game that we all share a love and passion for. So looking forward to continue to meet people and grow.
All right. Well, so for Jam, for myself, for the No Ceilings team at large, for the basketball community at large, we just want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with us the length of a Lord of the Rings movie. As we as we are out our as we are our draft and early free agency thoughts. Go watch Mortal Kombat 2. It's really freaking fun. It sets up MK3, and I'm gonna be there. Like I know it's gonna be another few years, but please go and watch Mortal Kombat. It's a good, stupid movie. Jam, you got any movie or book recommendations before we head out of here?
No, if someone has any more film recommendations, I'm more TV shows. I'm trying to watch more movies, so I would definitely watch Mortal Kombat 2. Saw the first one, and then the original ones when we were kids, Mortal Kombat Annihilation. So I gotta watch
The
this
soul
one.
is mine. Yeah, it's really good, man. Johnny Urban as Johnny Cage is like just beautiful work, man. Just beautiful work.
I know the Miz wanted that one, but I think this is a much better casting.
Yeah, you almost got me. Shout out to Sami Zayn, by the way, new WWE
Yeah,
champion,
let's
first
go.
time holding a world title at WWE,
Overdue.
long deserved. Shout out to Sami Zayn. All right, but for Sami Zayn, for us, for the basketball community, for Summer League, we have been the Draft Sickos, and we will catch up with y'all next time. Much love, y'all.